Hi, good to see you. Elena, it's not my business, but I'm still going to ask you. Have you thought about it? The older gynecologist looked attentively at the thin girl sitting in front of her. Understand? It's still early for you to have children. You're still a girl. What do you say? I'll soon be born, and when I have them, I'll be happy. I will get married immediately. Josué made me a proposal recently. We are just waiting for school to finish, and after school he doesn't plan to continue studying. The woman asked, why rush? I have my whole life ahead of me with the baby. It will grow, and then I will study. I have everything planned. Elena got up and began to gather her things. Don't worry, everything will be fine. I hope so. The doctor murmured, here you go. This is an order for the analyses, and this is a prescription for the vitamins, but I still advise you think about it carefully while the deadline is short. Afterwards, there will be no turning back. But Elena pretended not to hear the last words, and, thanking the doctor, she left the office. Elena was dialing Josué's number. She couldn't wait to greet him. News to her lover, but he wasn't answering the phone. She was sure that it would be good news for him too. They had been dating for almost a year, and he had recently proposed to her. He had told her, when you finish school, we will get married immediately and live happily. Don't be afraid. My parents are not against it. That night, everything happened, and shortly after, Elena felt bad in the middle of class. She had to leave after lunch. Her friend Jamila visited her. When she saw Elena pale, she immediately understood what was happening. Are you pregnant? Jamila asked. I don't know, Elena said, but this has been going on for several days. Josué knows. Not yet, but I don't think there will be any problems. We plan to get married after school. Of course, we don't plan to be parents so soon, but that's the way it is. Jamila didn't share her friend's certainty. Unlike Elena, she was not blinded by love for that boy and had seen many times how he flirted with other girls. Josué was a coveted boyfriend, and added to his attractiveness, it was not surprising that the girls were willing to fight over him. Karo Janin didn't know anything about that. Suddenly, Elena's grandmother appeared in the room. Hello, Elena, she said. Elena, what's wrong with you? Have you been intoxicated with something? Elena didn't respond to her grandmother and just looked pleadingly at Jamila, asking her to keep the secret, but it was in vain. Felipe, she is pregnant. You will soon be a great-grandmother. Grandmother, it is not yet certain. The granddaughter tried to justify herself. Tomorrow, I will go to the doctor, and then they will tell me everything. The old woman sat in a chair in front of her granddaughter, and looking at her said, who is that scoundrel? Josué. Grandmother, he is not a scoundrel. We will get married as soon as I finish school. He made me a proposal. So he's my boyfriend. You're a fool, Elena, Felipe muttered. Just like your mother. The woman got up from her chair and left the room, pouring herself a cup of tea. She sat by the window, and she said in a low voice to herself, you silly old woman, you didn't protect your daughter, and now you are losing your granddaughter. Elena grew up as an obedient girl. Unlike her mother had already been dating boys since she was young and had Elena leaving her daughter with her own mother. The young woman continued with her adventures, constantly changing her partner. The only thing that made Felipe happy was that her daughter did not have any more children. Years later, her daughter died. She found herself with a pathologically jealous boyfriend who hit her when he suspected a friendship with another man. The blow knocked her down, and she did not get up again after burying her daughter. Felipa, she dedicated all her strength to raising her granddaughter. Elena pleased her with her achievements at school and her good behavior, but then Josué appeared, who charmed his naive granddaughter, and now she was pregnant with him. Felipe did not believe in Josué's serious intentions. He was just like his father, Bernardo, arrogant and shameless. Elena was walking back from the doctor, and her mood was getting worse with every minute. She had already called Josué a few times, but there was no answer. Suddenly, someone called her. When she turned, Elena saw the old woman bellowing, hello, Elena, why can't you find Josué? So sad. The old woman narrowed her eyes. Do you know where he is? Asked the girl. Of course, she went to the cafe with Natalia. I was surprised. I thought maybe they had fought with Natalia. Elena ran to the cafe in the semi-dark place. The music was playing loudly, and he smelled alcohol in the middle of the room. Some girls were dancing in a corner. There was a table where a happy group was meeting with Josué in the center. Natalia was sitting in her chairs. Elena knelt down and kissed him. Without believing what she saw, she approached the table, but no one paid attention to her. Joshua, what's going on? The whole group turned towards her, but Natalia didn't even move. She continued sitting on her knees. watching Elena with a smile. Shameless, what do you want? Elena asked Joshua. I ask you what's going on here, Elena repeated. We're having fun, he answered. And why did you come? I was looking for you. I wanted to give you some happy news, Elena said. I'm pregnant, Joshua. And what do I have to do with that? Asked the boy, smiling. What do you are the father? You promised to marry me, she responded. Promising does not mean getting married. Josué laughed. You have to be very stupid to believe that a boy like me would marry a fool like you. I only wanted to sleep with you, and now you fell for it. Go away. Don't bother us while we're having fun. But what am I going to do? She asked. Those are your problems, Joshua said. Don't even think about bothering me with that. I'll tell my father, and you'll regret it. Full of shame and desperation, the girl didn't know what to do. She ran out of the room. Club drowning in tears. Elena, the old woman Bylan tried to stop her, but it was in vain. Then she went to Elena's house, hoping to find her grandmother Felipe there. You, Elena, crying. She ran to the river. Something terrible could happen, Bylan shouted, opening the doors suddenly. My God! Felipe ran out of the house and headed towards the river. Elena was standing on the bridge, nervously twisting the edge of her blouse. Quote, Don't do it, Felipe said, approaching the girl. I won't be able to live without you, Helena. Grandma, he said that I am a fool, that everything he said was just to sleep with me. I don't want to live. How am I going to walk with such shame? God will punish him. He will pay for his actions. But come here, said Felipe, approaching the girl. Not only would you kill yourself, but also to an innocent child who will care that child make fun of his life. They will point the finger that he is illegitimate. We will leave, Helena, we will leave. And we will not tell anyone. We will say that his father died. Don't be afraid, dear, I will help you. Elena finally turned to her grandmother. Her huge, teary eyes looked at her with hope. Let's go home, dear, calm us down. You'll see, God will punish him. A week passed. Elena didn't leave the house, thanks to Natalia. The whole town knew that Josué had made fun of her. Felipe's heart broke when seeing her granddaughter. Elena didn't eat anything. She was just crying. Please, enough. When you finish the exams, we will sell the house, and we will go very far. Wherever you want, we will go. And when the baby is born, you will go to study. I will take care of the child. Don't worry, Elena. Everything will be fixed. But Elena seemed not listening to her grandmother. She continued to refuse food and wouldn't stop crying. One day, when Felipe returned from the market, she found her granddaughter unconscious, physically exhausted and nervous. The ambulance doctor diagnosed it. We took her to the hospital. You wouldn't hurt to visit a doctor either, she advised. Looking at Felipe, okay, I'll go to the doctor, she murmured. But first I have to visit someone. The woman headed to Bernardo's house, ready to tell him everything she thought about her despicable son. As soon as Bernardo, he saw her through the window and went out to the porch and shouted, If you've come to ask for compensation, go away. If I had to pay every bimbo who spreads her legs for my son, I would soon be ruined. You're trash, and you've raised a son anyway. We don't need anything from you alone. I came to tell you that you will pay for Elena's tears. She will beg for forgiveness, but it will be too late, Felipe shouted. You should take better care of your silly granddaughter instead of coming with complaints to decent people, or she will end up like her mother. Damn you, Felipe shouted, but Bernardo turned around and walked away. He went into the house. The woman picked up a stone from the road and threw it towards the house, hoping to break a window. She missed. Then she went home. She got to the house. She sat on the porch and didn't get up again. Felipe, what are you doing sitting here? Bolin was behind the fence trying to see what was her neighbor doing, but it seemed that Felipe was asleep. Bolin approached the porch. She already had a bad feeling. Felipe was sitting in an unnatural position and was not moving. My God, Bolin said and called the ambulance. How could this happen? She asked when the doctors were taking the patient. Felipe's body to the ambulance, probably a heart attack, the doctor responded. After the ambulance left, Balin and old Jesus discussed the situation. What are we going to do now? How do we tell Elena? Balin said, yes, it is a situation. Difficult, said Jesus. Tomorrow, I will go to the city. I will visit Elena, and someone has to take care of the funeral. She decided. I will go with you, said Jesus. Excuse me, an unknown voice interrupted them. Could you tell me where she lives? Felipe Aduis was alive, murmured Balin. Was alive. She left, died today, said Jesus. You were late, young man. Sorry. The man took a step towards them, and that he was older, and his granddaughter Elena. Where can I find her? Bolin and Jesus looked at each other. Why are you looking for her? Jesus asked. Some acquaintances asked me to deliver something to Felipe or her granddaughter. Where can I find her? She is in the hospital, but be careful, she is going through a lot of stress. Thank you, said the man and headed to his car. The next morning, Bethlehem and Jesus arrived in the city and separated to do their errands. Jesus went to the funeral home and Bethlehem headed to the hospital to see Elena. How are you, dear? Elena was lying very pale, but she was no longer crying. Her eyes were looking at the ceiling without seeing what happened. She asked Bullen, what are you talking about, dear? Bullen did not understand. My grandmother yesterday. I heard the nurse's conversation. I wanted to go see her, but neither nor. They didn't even let me leave the room, and they gave me an injection. Everything is still blurry. My heart had been hurting for a long time, said Bullen. Don't be afraid. We won't leave you alone. You will stay with me for a while. Thank you, Bet. And how can I go to the funeral? I will talk to the doctor. I think he'll let you go. Rest. Now I'll be back. The old woman left the room and headed towards the doctor's office at the nursing station. She noticed the man who had arrived the day before was talking to one of the nurses when he saw Bullen. He acted like he didn't recognize her and left. She was surprised by his behavior but quickly forgot about it when she saw the doctor. Everything is fixed, dear. Tomorrow I will come look for you and take you home today. Rest and get well. Elena nodded her head, and then Bullen suddenly remembered. To the strange man, Elena, while I was not there, someone else came to see you. The girl looked at her, surprised. Who would come to see me? Oh, I came with Jesus. He also planned to visit you, but I think he got distracted with the preparations. I improvised. Bullen, well, rest. See you tomorrow. It's okay, Elena said, and fell into a deep sleep. They had given her medication again on the way home. Bullen told Jesus about the strange encounter at the hospital. I don't like that man, Bullen said. Yes, it's all very strange, he responded. But don't worry. Worry ahead of time. Tomorrow you take Elena with you, then we will think about what to do. Doctor, I want to have an abortion. Elena said, I don't want to have this child. Elena, the decision is yours, but as a doctor I must warn you that these decisions can have consequences. You are very young, you understand. The doctor spoke and looked at her attentively, but he did not see a trace of nervousness in her. She understands that I have been left completely alone. I cannot offer anything to this child, and do not tell me that someone will help me. My son would live in poverty and without love, okay? I understand. Tomorrow you will see the gynecologist. Meanwhile, you have tonight to think about it again. Thank you, Elena said. One more night to think about it. If the doctor knew how many nights she had spent thinking about her grandmother's death, it was the last brick in the wall that she built between her past and her future. The old naive Helena had died with her grandmother, and tomorrow, after the abortion, a new Helena would be born who would make everyone who contributed to this transformation pay. When she left the hospital, she felt like a different person, as if nothing had happened. He didn't care. He didn't want to scream. He just wanted to go to sleep and never wake up again. But first, revenge decided. Elena, sitting on the porch in the same place where her grandmother had died a few days before, got up and was about to entering the house when someone called her Elena. When she turned around, she saw an unknown man. He was tall, middle-aged, and well-dressed. The girl looked at him suspiciously. Hello, Elena. She approached the porch directly. Who are you, and what do you want? The girl asked. Girl, I'm your father, said the perfect man. Elena laughed bitterly. I guess you're about to die, and you've decided to leave me your entire multi-million-dollar inheritance. Don't expect me to thank you. And I'm actually very tired. I don't have time for you, so goodbye and no bother me more with nonsense. She turned around and prepared to leave. I understand how you feel, said the man, but let me explain everything to you. I am not sick. I am in excellent health. I heard about you recently. Listen to me, please, and you will understand everything. And if I don't want to listen, then I will sit on this porch until you agree to talk to me. Elena sighed and said, well, okay. Talk, and sat on the porch. I have a proposal. She smiled. The stranger, let's go to lunch and I'll tell you everything. Elena nodded in agreement. In the cafe, after ordering the food, the man didn't take long to come. Go to the point and asked, can I start? The girl felt and Reclinovel a little more than years ago. I came to your town for business. I was married, but your mother drove me crazy. When I returned home, I wanted to divorce and marry your mother. I didn't know anything about the pregnancy. Suddenly my wife informed me that she was pregnant, and I could not leave my future child without a father. I had to say goodbye to the dream of being loved. Then a miscarriage occurred, but as I discovered later, everything was a lie, and there was never a pregnancy, but at that time I did not know it. Then she suffered a lot and asked me to stay with her. I felt sorry for her. So years passed. I decided to return to your town. Felipe informed me that your mother was no longer here, and she kicked me out. She didn't tell me that she had a daughter. It didn't make sense to get divorced. So I stayed with my wife a few months ago. My wife was diagnosed with cancer when she died. She confessed to me that years ago while I was in the bathroom, your grandmother called. My wife posed as the maid Felipa. She believed her and asked her to tell me that your mother was pregnant. Naturally, my wife is not. Conveyed the message and then made up his own story about the pregnancy. After burying my wife, I came here. Forgive me, but your mother did not have an exemplary binding. I had to make sure you were my daughter. I had to bribe the medical staff while you were in the hospital to get a sample of your ADM. When everything was confirmed, I came to see you. I know what happened to you. Let me help you. Elena looked at him with disbelief and a mix of emotions. She didn't know if she should trust this man who claimed to be her father, but something in his tone and in his story seemed sincere. So many seemed to read his thoughts. I imagine you want to take revenge on those who have hurt you. He smiled. But think, what can you do now? You have no money or contacts or loyal friends, and you don't even have a clear plan for that's what I propose that you come with me. Put your thoughts and feelings in order, improve your life, and make a plan for revenge. Believe me, revenge is a dish that is served cold. Maybe you are right, Elena admitted. Excuse me, could you tell me where? I can find a hotel around here. In front of the taxi drivers there was a young and beautiful woman who had arrived on a bus that had just arrived in town. She had a suitcase in one hand and a backpack on her back. A hotel in this hole, one of the taxi drivers said. His dirty shirt, his faded pants, and his old cap clearly said that he hadn't left this town in a long time. Well, Jamie, you said you were going to get out of this hole as soon as you finish school, Elena thought, looking at the man. The disheveled person who had answered her turned out to be her classmate who had looked at her with contempt during all her school years. Maybe someone would rent an apartment. Elena needed a place to stay. Nicholas, you have a big house. Why don't you take Mississippi, said Jamie, addressing him. One of the taxi drivers sitting in his car. The men laughed. Elena examined. Sincerely, Nicholas, I didn't know him. He would have arrived while she was gone. But who in their right mind would come to this hole where there is no work or perspectives? Nicholas got out of the car and approached her. He was a man of average height with broad shoulders and muscular arms. Well, if the lady is willing to pay for her accommodation and behave with decorum, we could try it, he said. Elena looked him directly in the eyes. Of course. I am well educated and I know the rules of behavior in a stranger's house, so don't worry about my behavior. Nicholas's house turned out to be really big, 2 floors and a huge terrace with 2 doors. Nicholas. He went to one of them. This is where my parents used to live here, but they have since passed away. I wanted to join these 2 parts, but it stopped for a moment. I haven't done it yet, so it will have a separate entrance. It's practically a separate apartment. Thank you. It's perfect. Elena thanked later. After agreeing on the price, he went to his part of the house, unpacked, showered, and changed his clothes. Years passed. Since he left here with his father, he lived in Barcelona. He had a huge apartment in one of the skyscrapers, a country house with a small fleet of cars, and a very prosperous business. Santos insisted that Elena study at one of the universities in Barcelona. Understand me, daughter. Education not only provides knowledge, education teaches how to think correctly. Elena dedicated herself to her studies. At first she studied because she had to, but then learning new things fascinated her, and she began to seek knowledge on her own. She graduated from university as one of the best in her class. Her father placed her in his company in the position of his assistant. After working for a year, Elena decided that it was time to take revenge. When her father found out about her intentions, he accepted it as something inevitable, and together they made a plan. Of course, this is just an outline. We don't know what has happened in these years, so that we will adjust the plan as we go, he said. So to begin with, you must find out everything and not rush to get quick results. Everything must be well thought out. It may take several years. So be patient. Don't worry, Dad. I won't rush me. The last night before his departure, they were sitting together in a restaurant. Call me every day, please, Santos asked. Tell me everything that happens to you. Elena nodded her head. Her father took a small ring with a stone out of his pocket. Dad, why these gifts? No. This amulet is a gift and my peace of mind. Keep in mind that if I don't receive your daily call, I will immediately go look for you. But if something happens to you, just press this stone hard and it will send a signal to me and my head of security. Always wear it for. Please, it's okay, Elena said. All those years her father lived only for her. He was attentive, kind, and generous, as if he were trying to make up for all the years lost in the morning. Elena began her path to which she had been dedicating herself all that time. She didn't realize when she stopped. She fell asleep. She looked at the clock. It was o'clock in the morning. She decided it was time to get up. She put on her tracksuit and went out for a run. This was one of the points of the plan, to do a daily morning run. Under her appearance, Elena could observe all the changes around her. Listening to what they said, she didn't care about being recognized. Her new brown hair color, colored contact lenses, and a diet had transformed her beyond recognition. The general appearance of the town depressed her. Only one street in the town prospered. New houses appeared, mansions, the fences increased in height. It was clear that there was no shortage of money, and here is the house of the family that almost ruined my life, Elena thought with resentment, and stopped in front of the house as if he were tying the laces of his sneakers. Good morning. I don't remember having seen you here before. Bernardo's voice sounded next to her. Elena saw him leave through the gate, but she didn't think he would stop next to her. You came to visit the Ursus family. The Ursus lived on that street. The head of the family owned a wood processing company located nearby. Elena understood that Bernardo had asked it only out of courtesy. I guess he already knew where he had stayed. She didn't answer. She doing how to adjust the cord. Then he got up and prepared to continue running. He had nothing to talk about with Bernardo, not yet. And who have you come to see? I know everyone here, he insisted. To no one. I'm alone. Elena looked at the man with disgust, making it clear to him that she didn't like her questions. Then she started to run slowly. Bernardo followed her in his car, moving slowly with her. Don't get angry. I've just lived here all my life. I know everyone, and you are a new person. I'm curious to know why such a lovely person has come to our town. Don't you think she's being a little pushy? Elena said with a grimace, turning toward a path that led to the neighboring street. Forgive me, please. She heard what was said behind her. No, sorry. You should have asked for forgiveness before, she murmured as she approached the fence. Elena heard a child's voice. On the terrace, a little girl of a few years was running, followed by a puppy. Nicholas was sitting in a wicker chair, watching the girl. When he saw Elena, he greeted with a serious expression. I was afraid I would wake you up. I was running, Elena responded. Looking at the girl, do you practice sports? Nicholas asked. Not only do I run, it helps me think, wake up, and of course, stay in shape. Well, that's commendable. Do you want a coffee? The man asked with pleasure. Elena responded with joy. If she managed to become friends with this family, information would be easier for her. Nicholas took the girl in his arms and entered the house. Elena followed him. A small hallway led to a huge kitchen with the stove in it. The kettle was whistling. The man ran to turn it off. There were toys scattered everywhere. Sorry, we haven't had time to tidy up. He excused himself. Come on in. On the table, there was already a plate with sandwiches, a basket with muffins, and cups of coffee. Excuse my curiosity. Where's your wife? Elena dared to ask. She died. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Nicholas didn't answer. Nothing. And where do you work? She asked. At school. I'm a physics and computer science teacher. We moved here years ago. First my wife's parents and then us. The city air was too heavy for Anna, my wife, so we moved here. I thought you were a taxi driver. Elena said. I only do odd jobs. Well, tell me about yourself. Why you came here? The company I work for won a tender to open factories in several villages like this, and I, as a specialist, came to identify what type of production would it be more profitable here. This legend was invented by her and her father for when questions arose about the reason for their presence here. Elena, excuse me, but we have to go. Nicholas got up from the chair. I still have to take Christy to the kindergarten. Yes, of course. Elena also got up. I go to my room. When I got to her room, she changed her clothes. She sat on the bed and stayed thoughtful. I needed to spread the word that legend discreetly among the inhabitants of the town. Called his father. Dad, what's wrong with the documents? Now I'm going to see Ruben. Ruben was an old friend of his father and a high official in charge of land regulation at the state level. Just let him know, because today I plan to start spreading the rumor about the new factory. Don't worry, daughter, we will fix it today. We will send all the documents to the local mayor. After chatting a little more with her father, Elena began to get ready. She needed to dress in a way that would not look strange, but at the same time stand out from the crowd. Some simple jeans at first glance, a jacket, and some boots that upon closer examination revealed their high cost, adding some small and elegant diamond earrings, and a silk scarf. The girl was completely ready, where you can listen to all the news and tell it discreetly. Well, of course, in the local market there, the young woman went to the market. There were many people. Everyone was talking, making noise. Their life, it was in full swing. A new car arrived at the market. Natalia came out. Her whole appearance screamed that she had a lot of money. Well, she said, shopping time? She looked around and her gaze stopped on Helena. She recognized her. No, she didn't recognize her. She looked at Helena. Elena looked up and down, evaluating his appearance, and Natalia put a friendly smile on her face. Ah, it's you who has settled in Nicholas' house. He wasn't exactly a tactful person. Yes, Elena decided to act as if she were surprised by so much impertinence. Natalia noticed it, and she decided to soften the impression she had given of herself. Don't be offended. This is a town. We're all very direct here. By the way, you'll stay a long time. I'm here for work. When I'm done, I'll leave right away. How interesting, she exclaimed. Natalia, and excuse my curiosity, what work has brought you here? The company where I work wants a tender to build a factory in your town. My task is to determine what type of production would be viable here, find a suitable place, and start construction. Oh yes, and they all have it. The documents ready. Is that I know the mayor a little, and he has not mentioned anything about it. If everything was not ready, he would not have come, and if the mayor does not know anything, it is still because perhaps he has not been informed yet. I think that tomorrow he will be informed. We'll update. The last sentence, Elena intentionally said it out loud. It was important for the locals to hear that she had enormous resources and influential leadership for whom the local mayor was not an authority. Some women listened to her, and without hiding their satisfaction, they looked at Natalia. Oh, but I already have everything I need. Natalia suddenly exclaimed, why did I come here? She headed towards her car, turned around and said to Elena, well, welcome to our hole. All this seems very strange to me. The mayor was twirling his glass of whiskey in his hands. Why has our government suddenly decided to be so generous? Open a factory in the middle of nowhere. Probably someone wants to launder money. Bernardo was also twirling his glass in his hands. It wouldn't be bad to join in. Maybe we'll fall for it. An extra $1 million in your pocket. Everything has already been distributed. Look, the papers haven't arrived yet, and the specialist is already here. There are enough people interested in taking a good cut. We have to earn the trust of the specialist. Bernardo smiled. I saw her as a young girl. If it was something serious, they would have sent someone with more experience. They are probably just pretending. They will build something simple. They will launder the money. They will inform their superiors, and that's it. If they really plan something serious, they will have to be monitored. Who in Barcelona is going to want to live in this hole? So they will put the locals in charge. Guess who should be in charge of the new company? You know my conditions. The mayor smiled. So we agree we have to get all the information from the girl. It starts with the excuse of the documents that arrived, Bernardo said, and left Mayor Elena's office along the town. Today he wanted to dedicate himself to work. He needed to find a good piece of land for construction. He had already decided on the activity of the future business and developed the sequence of actions. I expected that the night before the movements would begin on the part of her opponents, but the night passed calmly. No one sought to meet with her. She had made some mistake. Well, we will wait. Maybe if they see actions, they will begin to move, thought the woman. So getting up early with the excuse of a race, she headed towards the limits of the town. From behind, the sound of a car approaching was heard. Elena continuing her race. She pretended that she was not interested at all. Good morning, young lady. From the car window, a burly man of a few years, dressed in a cashmere coat that revealed a three-piece suit, looked at her. You are the specialist who has come from our high command to modernize our town. Although even so, this is not the right time to talk about business, Elena said. Of course I understand. I just wanted to invite you to my office to discuss some details. And you? Who are you? Elena stopped and looked at the man. She knew who he was, but she had to keep up the appearance of being new. At the place Cyprian Hayeste, the local mayor, smiled. The burly man. And why should I go see him? Cipriano. Elena resumed her jog. The car began to follow her slowly. Well, according to the documents, you are in charge of the development of the future factory. Could help her with information about the area, and the population is fine. I'll pass, Elena said, and turned towards the houses. He's waiting for her. She heard behind her. This is not what she expected, but it's even better. Elena thought the morning turned out to be productive. She found an excellent place for construction and confirmed that his bait had started to work. Elena, do you want a coffee? Nicholas told him. as yesterday he was sitting in his chair waiting for Christy to play with the puppy. Thank you. First, I'll take a shower. Elena came into the kitchen just when Nicholas was serving coffee for both of them and milk for Christy. You have caused a big stir. He told him everyone is talking about you. What is this new program to support the people? I really don't know much. Elena evaded the question. I just do what they tell me and tell me. Nicholas, what professions? The common ones predominate among the local inhabitants, mostly workers. Everyone knows how to do a little bit of everything. You are going to hire local people, of course, and if that is not enough, we will attract people from nearby towns. That's good. It's hard to believe that. Has anyone remembered us by the way? Why?" Nicholas asked the question for which Elena had prepared an answer for a long time. One of the founders of the project had his father living here a long time ago, and he died here. It seems that this is in her memory. Nicholas and Christy left, and Elena began to prepare to go see the mayor. She was curious to hear what he had to tell her in the morning. She had not made an impression of a businesswoman that was evident in her tone of voice. Now was the time to correct that impression. A formal trouser suit, an impeccable hairstyle, heels, nude-style makeup, and some decorations created the image of a businesswoman who always achieves what she wants. Good morning. Cipriano smiled. Sorry, I didn't understand your meaning well. Name in the documents. Elena decided not to hide her name. She sat in the chair in front of the mayor. Coffee? He asked. No thanks, let's get straight to the point. What questions do you have about our documents? Practically none. I have revised the proposed costs according to them. It seems that they are planning to build a not very large factory because they say so. Elena smiled. If you paid attention to the project plan, you would notice that a large production is planned. We even intend to enter international markets. By the way, this project is not final. I have already, the management has decided so. In a couple of days, I will present the final version, but according to my calculations, the final result will be more expensive, but the specified amount does not correspond to their plans, said the surprised mayor. It will not be enough for the entire project. This program allows the use of help from sponsors. We will look for investors. In fact, we have already found some. As soon as I present the final project, we will begin negotiations. Elena had the feeling that even across the table she could see how the mayor rubbed his sweaty hands in anticipation of his win. Cipriano continued to talk a little more about how happy he was that a program like this had come to his town, and then began to say goodbye. Thank you, Elena. I hope to be one of the first to know the final decision on your project. Goodbye. Cipriano. To his surprise, when he got home, Elena found Nicholas. Why are you not at work? Last something she asked. Today I have the day off from school. I normally dedicate this day to the housework. Nicholas laughed, and Elena noticed how dimples appeared on his cheeks and his eyes shone. I will help you anyway. I have nothing to do at the moment, Elena said, but of course he did not answer. He no objections are accepted also. I need to distract myself from mental activities. Well, you convinced me. Dinner is on me. Nicholas went to load the washing machine and tidy up while Elena dedicated herself to cooking and cleaning the kitchen. Since she was little, she liked to cook. Elena started roasting meat with vegetables for dinner and prepared the dough to make homemade muffins. Meanwhile, Cipriano urgently called Bernardo and invited him to his office. Well, what do we have? Bernardo asked as soon as he entered the office. The production is serious. It will be on a large scale and profitable. The lady hinted to me that they even have access to international markets. You understand what that means for us? The mayor rubbed his hands. I understand. Bernardo scratched his chin thoughtfully. First, I will be left without workers. I think all the locals will run away. Work with them for a good salary. We urgently need one of our own in this matter, said the mayor. Think of something. You will be the one to talk to this woman. We need to align her with our vision. I have a idea, said Cipriano. According to the documents, very little money is allocated for such a construction, but it is also mentioned that they can attract sponsors. Elena hinted that they already have sponsors, but even so, then you suggest displacing those inatters, Bernardo deduced. Well, yes, in exchange for a participation in the project. The future is a good option. We just need to know how much money they will need. Nicholas went to look for Christy at the kindergarten, while Elena went up to her room to rest and change for dinner. After giving up a shower, she lay down on the bed and fell asleep. A soft knock on the door woke her up. Elena put on a robe and opened the door. Elena, we're waiting for you, said Nicholas, looking at her with surprise. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to bed to rest and I fell asleep. I'm already downstairs. Nicholas met her at the door and helped her sit at the table. Christy was already sitting and eating. It's like in a restaurant. Elena smiled. The man smiled with satisfaction. He had wanted to impress her, and had taken great care in presenting the table after serving the food and fill the wine glasses. Nicholas made a toast. Cheers. He raised his glass. Cheers. Elena repeated. The evening was wonderful. They ate and chatted. Elena felt as if she had known this man all her life. After dessert, he went to put his daughter to bed and Elena went out to the terrace. He wanted to reflect on his next steps, but all his thoughts returned again and again to today's evening. Natalia, you should make friends with that Elena. It seems like they are the same age. Bernardo was sitting at the front of the table at the family dinner. Bernardo and I have seen her running in the mornings. You should also play sports, he added. Why do I have a good figure? Natalia protested capriciously. For the common good. Silly, Josué shouted at her. Her husband, there is a large sum at stake. How it irritated him when his father put him when he married the daughter of one of the local businessmen. Josué took it as a game. Natalia was just like him. She always thought about parties and pleasures after the wedding and the honeymoon. Josué continued with his previous life. The only changes were the new house, the gift from the father-in-law, and the constant presence of Natalia, but that is what Josué thought. Natalia, on the other hand, took everything seriously and began to play the role of a real wife. He forbade her to go out with friends, organize parties, and be absent at home without her permission. Josué simply laughed and ignored their complaints, considering himself free to do whatever he wanted. One night when Josué and his group of friends were having fun in a club with some girls, Natalia burst in, furious, and began to scream and push one of them away. The girls who were sitting on his lap. Jos finally lost his patience and hit his wife. Who do you think you are to give me orders? My wife. Then go home and take care of the housework, he shouted loudly as he took her out of the house. Club that night, he took the girl home and they had a passionate night. He woke up when they threw a bucket of ice water on him. When he opened his eyes, he saw his enraged father, his father-in-law, and his wife. The girls were nowhere. He was accompanying her, he said. Bernardo, his tone is not. It boded nothing good. The father took a belt out of his pants. Come on, Dad. You think I'm a little boy. Listen, I'm going to manage my own life. You try to defend yourself. Bernardo shouted and started hitting his son with the belt. So live without deprivation. My Costa, and nothing can be said to you. You have not worked a single day in your life, and you force your wife to run the house. Joshua was scared. He had never seen his father like that. So little brat, he started. From today, you will work. You will forget about friends, girls, and parties, and God forbid, if you hit your wife again, I will throw you out on the street without saying anything else. The father left the room, followed by the father-in-law. Natalia stood still. You complained, Josué asked contemptuously. And what did you think? You could treat me like that with impunity. She turned around and left the room. From that day on, Josué had to get up and go to work with Bernardo every day, but over time he got into work. He liked working for himself and looking for opportunities for get even richer. Natalia, after that paternal influence, felt his power and became simply unbearable. She demanded things. She reminded him of his duties towards her and was extremely arrogant, as if Joshua was her servant and not her husband. But when it came to money, the whole family showed an amazing unanimity and understanding. Even Natalia and Josué Paz put forward their disputes. This was one of those cases in which the opportunity arose to enrich Costa from others, which is why the representatives of both families. They met in the living room of Bernardo's house once the clock struck o'clock in the morning. Elena got out of bed and spent a long time in the shower, begging her figure to calm down. Think about the business, she told herself as she left the room. Shower. Elena got dressed and left the house to run. Today, she had no defined goal. Everything she needed, she had already seen. She just wanted to clear her mind and get rid of unnecessary thoughts through physical exercise. She ran, humming to the rhythm of the music in her headphones. So she didn't listen when they called her. She realized it when someone grabbed her elbow. Today, who else thought? And when she turned around, she saw Natalia. Good morning. I see that you also make an effort to stay in shape, Natalia said, smiling excessively wide. She also snorted. Elena, inside, you too, just for me. But out loud she said, good morning. I once organized a group at the university, and since then I've been running. Would you mind if I join you? Natalia asked. Not at all. Everyone only talks about you, she said. People? He murmurs. He has hope for something good. I suppose new, well-paid jobs, Elena said with a slight mockery as she looked at her interlocutor. Well, they'll just drink everything you give them, Natalia said. But I think the company management won't tolerate alcoholics among the employees. Employees? Then you will have a shortage of workers, said Natalia. Looking at Elena, Elena was disgusted by the way her partner talked about her countrymen. She knew that there were few drinkers in the town, but she decided to play along. To find out Natalia's intentions, I was sure that she had not invented this meeting on her own. Seriously, Elena tried to look confused, and that we are supposed to bring people from the neighboring towns. Elena understands our people need a firm hand from the owner whom to fear and obey, Natalia said with arrogance. But what are you saying? Elena felt like hitting her, but she restrained herself. Then I see that you have someone in mind, she asked. Did you understand correctly? Natalia said, I have an acquaintance, a man. Administrator sent by God. Do you want me to introduce him to you? By the way, he can help both in the construction and in the launch of the company. He has enormous connections. Seriously, he smiled. The good one. I do not object. If it is really like that, I will inform the management and they will meet with him. And who is he? My father-in-law Bernardo. It can't be, Natalia thought. You are Josué's wife. Elena could barely hide her astonishment. Natalia continued. Look, I will say that I met you while I was running. You turned out to be a great girl, and you really are, and I invited you to dinner. With us, let's say today, and it turns out that today we have a family dinner. The whole family will be gathered, my relatives, and those of the husband. Great, I will go. Elena agreed. Natalia promised to send a car for her, and satisfied, she ran to report on her achievements after changing into her bathrobe home and make a cup of coffee. Elena called her father, and after listening to her, Santos said, well, today, you have one of the most important days. You must awaken his greed as much as possible, and yes, I gave your project plans to my economist. Came to the conclusion that the project is profitable, so I gave instructions to take care of it, and today I will send people and equipment to you. Dad, there are enough people here. There is enough labor. I'm not talking about workers. I'm engineers, lawyers, economists, and about the workers you can choose them yourself. Great, Dad, you have inspired me. That's good, said Santos, but don't forget why you came. After talking to her father, Elena felt inspired. She needed to concentrate on the upcoming meeting so that those she would meet today had no doubt that her project was a gold mine, and she was the person they could take advantage of to take the company for themselves. As the time approached, she began to prepare. She took out her dress. It was impressive, scarlet in color with a modest neckline, open sleeves, and tight to her figure. After carefully applying makeup and combing her hair, she dressed, complementing her outfit with jewelry. She looked critically in the mirror. From the mirror, a beautiful woman looked at her like on the cover of a fashion magazine. The time was approaching. Elena put on a coat, she grabbed her bag, and went out. Finding herself face to face with Nicholas, there was an awkward silence. Neither of them could articulate a word. You are as beautiful as an Ada. Elena. No, he immediately noticed Chisti, standing next to Nicholas with her mouth open and admiring the girl. Thank you, dear, but I still can't compare myself to you. You are our princess, said Elena. Christie smiled satisfied. We wanted to invite you to have tea, but I see that you are already invited to another place. Finally, Nicholas said, yes, I'm going to have dinner with future business partners. The intonation was really justifiable. An outfit like that is usually worn for dates, not for business meetings, but Elena understood that a strict dress wouldn't accomplish anything. A honk sounded in front of the door and Elena, saying goodbye, headed there. Nicholas looked at her sadly. What is he thinking? Wait for a rich girl to fall in love with a simple teacher with a son sitting in the car. Elena suddenly she felt like going back and taking you with Nicholas and her little daughter. First things first, she ordered herself and put all thoughts about Nicholas out of her mind. Natalia came out to greet her. By the expression on her face, Elena understood that she looked stunning. Natalia could barely hide her anger and envy behind a friendly smile. Here's Elena, Natalia shouted, feigning joy. All the men in the family came to greet her. Admiration and barely concealed desire appeared on their faces. Good night. Elena smiled as widely as possible, and the men hurried to her. Introduce himself and kiss her hand. I think he exaggerated a little for the first time, thought Elena, observed those gathered around the table. Bernardo was sitting in front with his wife on his right throughout the meal. She hardly said a word. Immediately after dinner, citing pain, he retired headlong to his room. Then Natalia's parents were there. Josué and Elena completed the circle after the wife left. Bernardo focused all his attention on Elena. He served her wine. He joked. He complimented her. Josué also left. He was trying not to stay behind his father. He was captivated by Elena's beauty and he forgot his wife who pushed him impatiently with her elbow. The only one who stood firm and did not fall under the charms of the guest was Natalia's father, Hector, watching. To his father and his son throughout the night, he understood that they had forgotten why they had invited this lady and decided to direct the conversation in the right direction. Elena Segarim, you are already tired of the compliments tonight, but allow me to add that in addition to being beautiful, you possess an exceptional mind. Otherwise, they would not have entrusted you with a mission as important as raising production from scratch. Thank you, Hector. This is not my first project that I develop, but normally after developing the project, other specialists are in charge of it. This time, I decided to supervise it personally. Soon it will arrive the team, and with it people will come. What people? Bernardo also remembered why this dinner had been organized. The appearance of someone else from Barcelona could greatly complicate what they had planned. Specialists who will start directly with construction, recruitment of personnel and documentation, said Elena with a charming smile. Are you planning to hire local personnel? Yes, it is possible. If there is a shortage, we will bring people from neighboring towns. That is fine. Only if we have enough workers, there will probably be a shortage of specialists. Since everyone is busy, they would not put some uneducated local as the manager of a company like that. Of course, Elena did not smile. We would send someone from Barcelona, but a company does require large investments before it can really start. The government could allocate such an amount. Of course not, but we can attract sponsors. In fact, many have already offered their support, and what would they gain from that? We guarantee mentions of their help in everything related to our production. In the official reports, in the advertising, even the labels of the products, and will indicate with whom it was carried out. In addition, at the inauguration there will be a large press conference where a large part of the time will be dedicated precisely to the sponsors and their participation in the project. That's why we have many interested parties, and we don't worry about running out of money. Elena smiled. A silence took over the table. Elena thought, listening to how the men's brains crunched with their answers made them clear that they couldn't just approach this event and get money from it. Dad, I feel a little uncomfortable, Natalia intervened. It seemed to her that it would be suspicious if the guest was being interrogated about her work all night. I invited Elena to spend a good evening, and you have bombarded her with questions about her work. Yes, what is happening to us? She woke up from her reflections. Bernardo, forgive us, Elena, for our insistence. Simply, as someone who has been in the business world all his life, I always think about work. So tell us about yourself, what you like to do in your free time. I heard that you like sports. Not at all, said Elena. Mainly the morning runs help me plan the day and recharge energy. The company started discuss what they do in their free time. When the clock was approaching, Elena said, I'm sorry, but it's too late. I'm used to going to bed early and also getting up early. The girl decided that there was enough provocation for today. I'll tell our driver to tell you. Take, Natalia exclaimed, happy that the dangerous guest for her marriage was gone. And I can accompany you, said Josué, attracting a severe look from the whole family. Pay attention to your wife, said Bernardo, and I will accompany Elena. Bernardo, when the car started moving, said, for the first time in my life, I meet a woman like you. You have impressed me both in my mind and in my heart. I think I've gone too far, Elena thought, but she said, you're flattering me at all, Bernardo responded. Elena looked at him surprised. If she didn't know him, she would think he was really in love with an extraordinary combination of an exceptional mind and beauty. She remained silent. She was so amazed that she didn't even know what to respond. When they got home, Bernardo came out to open the door and help her down. Elena, this may sound a little cheeky. He brushed her hand lightly. I can hope to have lunch with you somehow. I promise it will just be lunch. Elena panicked again. Let me check my schedule, and I'll find time to have lunch with you. Thank you. I will be looking forward to it. Bernardo kissed her hand and got into the car while Elena headed home. Despite the late hour, Nicholas was not asleep. He was sitting on the terrace in a wicker chair drinking beer and occasionally looking at the phone. You can't sleep? I'm waiting for the game, answered Nicholas. I'm a football fan, but too noisy. So every time there's a game I go out to the terrace, so as not to wake up. Jokes seriously, I also have more beer if you don't. It matters to me. One, yes, of course. Nicholas looked at her funny. I'll just change my clothes. After showering and changing, she ran to the terrace. Nicholas brought another chair and some more bottles of beer. He put some nuts and placed the phone so that they could see the broadcast from both chairs. So you decided to get to know the local elite more closely? Nicholas asked as if nothing had happened, but Elena understood that this bothered her rather than with me. She replied, and what impressions do you get? Nicholas looked directly at them. Eyes, nothing that I wouldn't expect from people who have enriched themselves in a not very legal way. Elena turned her gaze. And Nicholas said, strange, a few hours ago your eyes were brown. They are glasses. Elena tried to get by. I have always wanted to have brown eyes. Forgive me for intruding, but your natural eyes are very pretty. Nicholas looked at her again and smiled so warmly that Elena felt like hugging him and not letting go. When the game was over, they both went to their rooms. Thank you for one night, he said, caressing her gaze. Not Elena. Anyway, she wanted to say goodbye, and from Nicholas's look she knew that the man wasn't looking at her either, and she couldn't move from her place. Involuntarily, she leaned towards his lips, but at the last moment Elena stepped back and, murmuring good night, she went to her room. In the morning, it was difficult for her to open her eyes. A contrasting shower helped her wake up. By putting on a tracksuit, she left the house. She needed to reflect on the previous night, and as usual running would help her with that, but all her thoughts returned again and again to the same place, to Nicholas. When everything is over, I will start again with Nicholas, and first of all I will tell him everything about myself, even the most embarrassing things, and then let him decide if he needs a woman like me. And as the mother of his son, I squeezed Elena's heart. And she stopped. She remembered in great detail the day when, giving in to her emotions, she had lost her son. Over time, she realized that she had acted badly. Her little boy would now be years old, and instead of developing an elaborate plan of revenge, she would take him to school or just play with him. Where was her head? If her grandmother was alive, she would not have allowed her to have an abortion. When meeting men, Helena hoped she could get pregnant and correct everything, but apparently the higher forces punished her, and she can no longer have more children. Elena stopped a little longer, shook her head, and ran again. After she heard the sound of a car, the girl ran without looking back. Another local oligarch with a business offer. Good morning, Elena. You are lovely, said an unknown voice. She stopped, and he looked at the person who was talking to him, a well-dressed and rich young man in an expensive supercar. No one in town had something like that. Another spoiled child thought that he could do whatever he wanted. Who are you? He asked abruptly. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Nicholas's brother. Damien arrived yesterday, but I was so tired that I went to sleep right away, so we didn't have the chance to meet. That's why you decided to get up early today to catch up with me on my run and get to know each other, the girl said. She continued running without wanting to talk to him anymore. He didn't insist, and when she returned home, she saw Nicholas smiling at her on the porch. His eyes looked at her so warmly that she was ready to melt and break her entire plan. The kettle is ready, she informed him. Thank you. I'll just change my brown clothes. Nicholas looked at her. Yes, with pleasure. Elena smiled. Hey, I met a young man, Damien said. Nicholas, yes, he really is your brother. Yes, he got into some dubious affairs at the university. He started to have money. He left school, then he successfully invested in something, and now he lives off the dividends. Honestly, even I was never surprised he visited us here. He didn't even come to our parents' funeral. That made me very sad. Then you already met him. How he caught up with me during my career and I decided not to talk to him, she said. But how did he know about me? And where was he in the morning when Damien left? He woke up. He wanted to move into your room to stay, but I told him the room was occupied. He was hanging around the doors and worried because there was no noise behind yours, and he wouldn't stick his head out to see who was making noise outside. So I assumed you were running. He decided to go to the cafeteria to have coffee, but I didn't think he would find you. He has always been cheeky, so don't pay attention to him. After breakfast, Elena retired to her room and locked herself. Nicholas took Christy to the garden infants and then went to work. Damian stayed at home. He offered Elena a walk for a cafe, but she declined. He needed to contact his father. Dad, I need information about someone. Yes. And who is he? Asked Santos. It may not be important, but it doesn't matter to me. Like the sudden appearance of a wealthy man who has never been here before. Dami Machado, a familiar man, the father said thoughtfully. I'm going to take care of that right now. With nothing else to do, Elena sat back, and surprisingly for her, she stayed asleep, and she slept almost all day. While she was surprised when she looked at the clock. I slept all day. There was a knock on the door. Thinking it was Damian, Elena didn't rush to open it, but the knock was repeated. Making a grimace, the girl opened the door, and the threshold was announced by her father's main auditor. Good morning, Elena. We have arrived. There were a few more people on the terrace. Oh yes. Excuse me, come in right now. I'll take care of you. The girl went to the bathroom to wash her face. In the morning, her father didn't even mention that his assistants they would arrive today. After recovering completely, he came out where they were staying. She asked, for now, nowhere. We came directly here. But honestly, we are very tired, he answered. Yes, of course I understand them now. We will decide where they will stay. Elena called Nicholas. He listened to her situation and suggested accommodation to the people on the second floor of her house. Elena accompanied the visitors. Upstairs, the ladies stayed in one room and the gentlemen in another. After the guests settled down, Elena, he suggested going down and having something to snack on. Then he called Nicholas again. Nicholas, there is a cafe around here, yes, but it's only open on weekdays. The owner, by the way, it's Natalia. I think you've become friends with her, Nicholas commented. AJ snorted. Elena dialed Natalia's number. She responded immediately as if she were waiting for his call. Hello, Natalia. I need help. Is there a decent restaurant around here? People have started to arrive, and I don't know how to organize their food. You know, there's a good coffee mine. I think it will be good for you. Natalia was encouraged. Great. You can organize the delivery of dinner for 5 people. It's good for you at TR hours. Perfect. She responded before disconnecting. She was satisfied. Elena understood that Natalia wouldn't have anything prepared, but she didn't want to look bad in front of the guests from Barcelona. It would be good for her to get nervous. What a character you have introduced me to, said Elena's father by his tone of voice. Elena understood that he was very satisfied. Your Damien is quite well known in certain circles. He is a cheater known as Juan de Dios. He specializes mainly in cards. He started while he was in college and was quite successful. After a year, he made his first million and left college. His victims were harmless. He didn't mess with the big ones. That's why they never touched him. He was always cautious. And if it weren't for your accurate description, I would never have thought that Juan de Dios was not his real name. A couple of months ago, he decided to take a risk and deceive very influential people. He did it and disappeared. Everyone believes he is abroad and they are looking for him there, and he's nearby. And what is he doing there? Dad is the brother of the man I rent from, said Elena, stopping to rest since she was on a morning run. Well, now it's clear. Well, I'll think what to do with this information. How are you? You start today? Yes. Why wait? I'm just a little nervous, Elena answered. Well, don't worry. Be careful and attentive. When Elena returned from running, everyone was already awake. Only Damian couldn't be seen. He's still sleeping. Nicholas responded to her question about him. Do you want some coffee? Later, I need to see the guests. Natalia made a great effort. Breakfast was delivered as agreed at in the morning with Nicholas. That morning, she did not meet again after breakfast. She organized a meeting that lasted until lunchtime. Everyone went to the coffee for lunch, and from there directly to the place of the supposed construction. In the afternoon, the teams arrived. Elena was happy. She liked having started something good and useful, and that this good deed made her enemies feel bad. Elena was sitting on the porch, smiling. Today had brought many changes and marked the beginning of a project to which he had been dedicating 7 long years. For now, everything was going well. His assistants had already gone to sleep. Nicholas was putting Chisty to bed, but Elena couldn't fall asleep. So who decided to go out to get some fresh air? Elena, let me keep you company. Damien was standing behind her. She had completely forgotten about him. Do it, she sighed. She still didn't feel like talking to him, but she wanted to observe him and find out what would be his next moves. So you are our local savior, he began, but upon seeing the girl's cold gaze, he realized that he had started it wrong. Her icy gaze left him rooted in place. I'm sorry, I mean they have come to raise the bar of life in this town, forgotten by God. She remained silent and watched Damian begin to feel uncomfortable. I have spoken with some locals. They have big plans and also financial resources, he said. Elena was still silent, but was beginning to get interested. It could be useful, he continued. He really looked at it with curiosity. Yes, I have excellent suppliers of tried and tested construction materials. And why have you assumed that I don't have them? Smiled wryly Elena. No, I didn't assume it, but probably yours are from Barcelona, which means that the prices are high. Mine are more modest, but the quality is not far behind and the price is at least 8% lower. What do you think, Damian? Sorry, you're an idiot, Elena said. An idiot? Why did the man get angry? It was the first time he was called that. Do you really think that my company started this project without planning or consideration, and now we are only thinking where to get the necessary materials? This has already been resolved and agreed upon for a long time. Well, I'm sorry, the boy murmured. Good evening, Damien. I can't say that it has been a pleasure talking to you, Elena. He got up from the porch. That night had been ruined. When he entered the house, he heard the phone ring. It was Bernardo. Elena, sorry for the call so late, he started, but you promised to have dinner with me at some point. I'm sorry, Bernardo, but no. It will be possible in the near future. The construction has started. Until it is at a stable pace, I will not have time at all. What a pity. From Bernardo's voice you could hear that he was really disappointed. After saying goodbye, Elena hung up the phone. In the morning, Elena grabbed a pile of flyers and ran out of the house. Yesterday, he had printed a large note of flyers with advertisements about new jobs at the construction site. He planned to go around the whole town and post these advertisements. He had been running for an hour posting the ads. When she heard the brief sound of a car behind her, she turned around and saw that it was Bernardo. Let's see, our beauty today has complicated her career with some additional loads. She stopped the car and stuck her head out the window. Yes, Elena decided to observe his reaction. I am attracting the residents of the town to work for me. That is fine. People must work, or who else but a monkey? Bernardo laughed at his own joke. Elena, forgive the insistence, but I really wanted to. Seeing you in a more neutral environment. She looked at him, surprised. I left early today to find you running and offering you coffee. Sit down. She opened the passenger door. Intrigued by this approach, Elena sat down. Bernardo leaned towards the back seat. He took out a thermos and 2 cups. She poured coffee from the thermos and gave him. He offered a cup to Elena. It's for you, the man said. So you want to deprive our employers of employees? Bernardo asked. Well, I guess a good employer won't lose his employees, Elena answered. Yes, yes. Bernardo didn't find what to answer. Meanwhile, Elena was silent, waiting. Elena, this weekend our whole family is going to get together. I would like to invite you. I am planning a barbecue, and I would really like you and your colleagues to join us. Okay, I will think about it. But now I'm sorry, but it's time. I was about to leave, and without waiting for a response, Elena got out of the car and ran, leaving Bernardo with his untouched cup of coffee. When he was approaching home, they called her again. I'm in great demand today. Elena laughed too herself, and Elena turned around. Good morning. Cipriano clumsily got out of his car. Good morning, Elena responded. I thought you and your colleagues would need an office. I decided to offer you a temporary office in my administration. He said, seriously, thank you. The girl thanked it. It would really be uncomfortable to work and receive people in Nicholas. Then we will pass around there. Okay, of course, said the man. I'll say that they prepare some offices for you to choose from. That's fine. And that their lawyers prepare the lease contract then. But what do you say? Mayer shrugged his shoulders. This is for friendship, without any rent work. As long as you need. Great, thank you, and see you later. Coffee. Nicholas received her traditionally on the terrace. Your colleagues have already gotten up. Yes, Nicholas, thank you. Now I'm coming. I have a terrible craving for coffee. She ran towards. He went to his room and changed into a business suit before going with Nicholas. Elena went up to the second floor. Her colleagues were sitting around a large table in one of the rooms they used for meetings. They were having breakfast. Natalia does not disappoint and delivered the food punctually according to the schedule. Elena, where do we start? Well, Mayor Cipriano is kindly providing us with several offices in the administration for free. So today, he announces, and I go there. We are going to take care of documents and receive people, because I think that in response to the ads that I posted, people will not take long to respond, and the chief engineer and his assistants go to the construction sites after saying goodbye to their colleagues. Elena turned to Nicholas. I longed to spend at least a few minutes near him. Time flew by. Almost half the town was looking for work in Elena's office, and people from other towns kept arriving. Cipriano came every day to the office where Elena worked, asking how things were going, pretending be happy and excited. Bernardo, you don't see what is happening. The mayor panicked. You will soon be left with nothing. We need to take urgent measures. Bernardo listened. He nodded. He promised to think, but he did nothing. He was afraid to admit even to himself what he felt for Elena, not as a threat to his well-being, but as a woman so desired and unattainable. The last time he had felt such emotions was years ago, so everything ended badly, and since then he had forbidden himself from getting involved with women. But Elena managed to melt her heart. She no longer wanted to take away his business or benefit from it. She wanted to develop this project with her together. She decided to follow her own path. Elena was walking home this weekend. Bernardo had invited her and her colleagues to a barbecue. She needed to make a decision about it. On the one hand, Elena wanted to spend those days with Nicholas. They could also organize a picnic in the garden. But on the other hand, at the barbecue, Bernardo and his team would probably go to the action, and she did not want to delay that. Hello, my Ada. Immersed in her thoughts, Elena did not notice how Nicholas and Christy caught up with her. We bought something. You are going to have a picnic with us, of course, honey. It did not arrive to Helen immediately that she had accepted so. He was breaking all his plans for tomorrow. Great. Nicholas was happy. Well, I'll figure it out later, she thought, and taking Chisty's hand, they ran towards the house. where Damian Elena was waiting for them on the porch. She had barely seen him all week when he left in the morning. He slept, and when he had already left, where he was going and why, no one knew, but he always came back visibly drunk. "Oh, hello," exclaimed Damian, the savior of the dying town. "Behave," Nicholas intervened. "What's wrong with you, brother? Have you fallen in love, or are you tired of your miserable existence, and you decide to become a gigolo?" Damian was apparently quite drunk. He tried to grab his brother, but Elena stopped the fight by stopping Nicholas, taking him by the hand. "It is not necessary to lower yourself to his level. You are simply jealous that you are living a normal life. They love you and wait for you at home. You have someone, and why live? You don't have to hide from anyone, but the one who is really poor here is Damian. He is poor in spirit. No one cares about the money you have earned in a dishonest way. It has not made you happy." Damian turned pale and barely spoke. "Who are you? Who the hell are you?" "See, Nicholas has gone crazy," Elena said calmly. "If I were you, I would be afraid to leave him alone with a child." "You are right, but what do we do with him?" "Call the ambulance." "No need to take him to the psychiatric hospital," Damian said. "No need. I'm going home and I won't be out until the morning." "But seriously, who are you?" Helena asked Nicholas, but she ignored that question. That night they were in the garden. There was a small gazebo. After sending Damian to sleep, they decided to have dinner together. Elena prepared dinner quickly, then they went out together to the terrace. They played with Christy until she got tired and fell asleep on Elena's lap. Nicholas took her to her crib and returned with a bottle. "Let's go for wine." He made a gesture to Elena and took her towards the gazebo. They sat down and simply drank wine in silence, enjoying each other's company, and suddenly she said, "I'm an ordinary woman, a climber. You know too much to be a woman. Common, and you have taken on too much to be a climber." "Well, then I am not at all common." He tried to divert the conversation jokingly. "You are so unusual that in one day you managed to find out who my brother is," continued Nicholas. "And what is someone special?" Elena tried to remain calm. "Yes, I know that he is a scammer," said Nicholas. "I found out completely by chance. I was an involuntary witness to his telephone conversation. It was a long time ago at my wedding. When I left the cafe to get some air, I was standing in the corner and I didn't know that I was listening to him. I didn't tell him anything at that time, and he still doesn't know. I always hoped that one day he would come and ask me for help, and his arrival today made me understand that he is in trouble now. And from what you said today," after which he turned pale, "I realized that they are very serious." "So who are you?" Elena, the young woman, sighed. It was not the right time to open up to him, but Nicholas continued, "Your appearance has changed. It means that they know you here, or rather, they knew you before, but you are hiding it, so it must be for something." He looked at her, waiting for an answer. Elena sighed again and looked him straight in the eyes. "There is nothing to worry or anguish about knowing me. I can trust that this will stay between us only if you are not planning anything bad. No, there is no way. I really changed my appearance so that they wouldn't recognize me here. If you think I have something bad in mind, you are right and wrong at the same time. I want to punish certain people who practically took everything from me a few years ago at the expense of ordinary people. No. Under no circumstances is it precisely with the help of ordinary people that I want to take revenge. I swear to you that the inhabitants of the town and all those who came to work with me will not suffer." "I don't know why, but I believe you," said Nicholas. "Thank you, Nicholas. I promise that I will tell you everything so soon as everything is over, but not now. I'm sorry." "Okay, I'll wait." He poured more wine and changed the subject. It was already dark, but they were in no hurry to go home. "It's time." Elena felt like she had to leave urgently. "Yes," Nicholas answered her, but he didn't even. She moved. She looked at him and got up from the bench, and at that moment he pulled her towards Yes and kissed her. "I'm afraid," Elena whispered. "What are you afraid of?" Nicholas asked, also in a whisper to myself. He moved away. "I'm sorry, I can't." Elena quickly went away. The house closing the door behind him, he leaned against it with his back and exhaled deeply. Everything was getting complicated. What kind of relationship could they have now? Was not the right time. He walked away from the door and turned around and opened it abruptly. On the threshold, Nicholas was there, and he and the girl ran into his arms. The alarm was ringing. Elena turned it off and carefully turned her head. The man was sleeping soundly, hugging her. He didn't want to leave her arms. "Come on, Elena. Stop relaxing. It's time to return to reality," she told herself. After washing and dressing, she ran out of the house. Nicholas had not yet woken up. She decided to go for a run around the town when she heard the sound of a car behind her. She was not even surprised. The car overtook her and ran away. Stopped abruptly, blocking the road. Who is Elena? She felt a little uncomfortable. Joshua got out of the car. Suddenly Elena's heart skipped a beat. Joshua, it was one of her enemies who knew her quite well. She stopped, trying to look calm. Maybe he recognized her. Hello, he said. Man, Elena was silent, looking at him with disdain. Her look disconcerted him. I took you somewhere. He couldn't find what else to ask. Get your car out of the way. I'm sorry, I just didn't think about it. I wouldn't recommend you. Think too much. You're not good at it. Let them. Adults think for you. Elena felt an internal relief when she realized that he didn't recognize her. He was just trying to flirt. Joshua quickly got into the car and drove away. They will come to our barbecue, he shouted at her as she ran next to his car. Now, I'm not even sure I don't want to being in the company of such a poorly educated person. Running towards the house, Elena was smiling. On the porch there was Nicholas with a cup of coffee in his hand. Good morning, she said, trying to pass by, but he caught her around the waist and cut her off towards yes. When he saw their scared eyes, he laughed softly. He kissed her and said he is greeting her incorrectly. He kissed her tenderly without realizing it. Elena put her arms around his neck and completely immersed herself in the sensation. It seemed like Bernardo would have a heart attack. He had gone to the hospital son's house to send him early to the city to get some additional purchases for the barbecue, but he didn't find him at home. It turned out that Josué went for a walk to meet Elena. Why did you go to see her? We have been here for days thinking about the best way to approach her so that she doesn't suspect our true plans, and you decided that with your pretty face you would conquer her, and she would be delighted to be with you and give us her business, said Bernardo, annoyed. Josué didn't know what to answer. He really wanted to get Elena's attention, but not to take over his business so that the production remains in his hands, but that he is with him. By marrying Elena, he would free himself from his hateful wife and the dependence on his father and father-in-law, but for some reason Elena did not fall for it. Her charms instead, he simply laughed at him. Bernardo was furious because his useless son decided to court a woman he himself found attractive. The night before they had had a meeting in which they decided it was time to act. It was agreed to make Elena an offer of financial help. Them Cipriano Hector, and of course Bernardo. In exchange, Elena had to put Bernardo or Hector in charge of the production, and now this fool, her son, wanted to ruin everything. And if she doesn't come to the barbecue, then nothing would work. In a relaxed atmosphere with good wine, the probability that she would positively accept his proposals would be much greater than in a formal environment. Dad, I urgently need to know the total value of Bernardo's assets, said Elena. Accounts, properties, all the companies that belong to him. Do you think they are mature? Asked Santos. I'm sure. Send the documents. Well, be careful. Santos was already about to hang up, but Elena asked unexpectedly, Dad, when this is all over I can stay here. Why was he surprised? I thought you liked the life in Barcelona. You also have a job here, yes, but there is also work here. You have fallen in love with Santos. Who is Dad? I'm not sure, and for now I don't have time to find out. I just want to stay, I guess. To understand. Elena and Nicholas were lying on a large spread blanket on the grass. The sun shone brightly. The birds were singing. Chisti, exhausted by the active games, she fell asleep in the chair at La Pergola. Damian had left early in the morning. Elena's colleagues went to the barbecue. Bernardo Nicholas hugged her and kissed Elena on the cheek. She smiled, then he kissed her again and again, gradually approaching her lips. Elena's determination to leave their relationships instantly faded. She hugged Nicholas by the shoulders and approached him from the facade. The insistent sound of a car was heard. Reluctantly, the young people separated from each other. I'm going to see who it is, said Nicholas. He returned quickly. His face reflected irritation. It's Bernardo to see you. Elena sighed and headed toward Bernardo, who was standing. Seeing Elena, put his hands together in a pleading gesture. Elena, forgive me for my son. I somehow neglected his education. What did you want? Bernardo asked Helena. I wanted to apologize for my son and convince you to join our barbecue. Your colleagues are already there. It seems they are having a good time. Okay, I'll change and join you. Elena didn't feel like leaving Nicol at all, but I had to finish what I had started. I'll wait for you here, he said with joy. Are you going? Nicholas, Elena asked. She nodded. She wanted to stay and forget everything. In her arms, she approached Nicholas and kissed him. Then she moved away. And she whispered, I'm sorry, that's how it must be. Hello, it's good that you came, Natalia said to meet Elena. She was already bored in this company of old people. She whispered to him. Bernardo heard. Pushing Natalia away, he hurried to court Elena, took her to a large terrace where there was a table full of food and drink. sat her on one of the wicker chairs, and handed her a glass of wine from the other end of the table. Hector and the mayor gave her a greeting gesture, and her colleagues sat next to her. "And how did you manage to leave my brother so excited?" a familiar voice said in her ear. Elena turned her head. "Damian, what are you doing here?" she asked. So he was aware of her relationship with Nicholas. Meanwhile, Bernardo was quick to intervene. "Elena, you probably already know Damian. He is also a businessman." "Yes, we know each other," Elena responded, diverting her attention to other members of the group. It was getting dark. I turned on the flashlights in the room terrace and it became very cozy. "How about we talk a little about business?" Hector suggested as if nothing was happening. "Dad, business? You can't stop thinking about work, even if it's just for one night," Natalia complained. "A real businessman always thinks about work," he intervened, announcing to, for example, "I am also interested in how to do business in a town like this," and everyone began to tell about their methods. Gradually, the conversation focused on one topic: the new reel production. The government has granted them so much money that they don't even need sponsors. Romeo Cipriano, but his eyes betrayed his seriousness. "Everyone knows that you never assign as much money as you need. That's why we need sponsors," he said. He announces with a condescending look at the mayor. "But we haven't heard anything about his sponsors. Where are they?" Bernardo, he addressed this question to Elena, looking directly at her. "You have not heard from our sponsors because we have not yet submitted a report on the work done. Furthermore, we have done some changes in the project which makes it significantly more expensive. I think our sponsors will be interested in a long-term collaboration with us as partners, but we do not have the right to reveal the names of our investors for now." "And what about the publicity?" they mentioned. "It is too early to tell publicity, and not all of our sponsors want to be in the center of attention." "Well, you know what I mean." Elena looked meaningfully at those gathered. There was an awkward silence. To relieve the tension, Josué began to fill the glasses. Everyone drank together. Then again, everyone tried to talk about topics that were not related to the production, but it was obvious that the locals were having trouble. "Back to the topic, Elena. You have already specifically decided on the sponsors," Bernardo decided. "Return to the topic. Why this curiosity?" "Simply Hector Cipriano, and I think that we are locals of this town, and we are concerned about what happens here. Of course, we would like to participate in its development, and what kind of help they are willing to offer," asked Elena, closing her eyes. "Can we act as their sponsors?" answered Hector. "I mean, they're only sponsors. What are their conditions?" Then Elena said, "Because I suppose they don't do it out of pure generosity. Truth is, on our part, there will be comprehensive support," said Hector. "And in what will that support consist of?" she asked. "If you put, for example, Bernardo in charge, you will get a competent and experienced manager." "Bernardo, since no one else knows all the nuances of doing business in our region, well, we will really need a good manager," Elena said, pretending to think. "It's an idea. Interesting. But excuse me, I'm afraid you can't handle such a large sum." "And how much would it be?" Cipriano asked. She mentioned the amount. Cipriano, with his eyes wide open, leaned back in the armchair. Hector began to caress his chin thoughtfully, and only Bernardo remained motionless, staring at the ground. "Exactly the same thing you have thought." Elena with satisfaction. "In fact, it is a considerable sum," finally said Hector. "Anyway," she said, "this is not the time to discuss these types of issues. After all, we came here to relax." After Elena's statement, everything was silent. Everyone reflected on what was said. Elena was also thinking, but about Nicholas. She got up from the couch and headed towards the pond. She needed to be distracted. "Friends, I'm sorry to interrupt their conversation," said Damian, "but I can offer my help." "And what kind of help?" asked Hector, interested. "To complete the amount they lack," said the man with a smile of self-satisfaction. "And who told you that something is missing?" Hector asked angrily. No one responded. "Damien, I just thought about it. In fact, Elena is right," Bernardo said. "Now is not the time to discuss this, by the way." "Where is she?" "She went to the pond," Damien said, "and Josué also went there." "Ah, that son of Bernardo's." He was angry to himself, but he didn't show it, and he didn't even go after them to go for him. He looked hopefully at Natalia, but she hardly took her eyes off Damien all day, and Damien shifted his attention to Natalia. Natalia approached the girl. "Would you like it?" "Taking a walk is a beautiful night." "With pleasure," said Natalia. "Elena, I want to apologize again for my behavior this morning." "How can I make up for my fault?" said Josué. "Take me home. There is another way out here to leave without being noticed." "Of course," said Josué. "Let's go." They walked towards Elena's house without hurry. "To be honest, I admire you a lot, Joshua," Elena began. She looked at him mockingly. No, seriously, you are so intelligent and very beautiful. As soon as I saw you, I knew that you were an extraordinary woman, he said. Joshua, that is enough. I will consider your father's proposal and his friends about collaboration. I really don't promise anything, but I will definitely consider it, said Elena, looking at him. To be honest, I don't care, said Josué. I have nothing to do with business. I like what I do in my father's company, but I'm not a manager, I'm an executor of tasks. So what do you want from me? She asked. He said nothing. He said, I just want you to forgive me and let me know. Parita, keep talking to you. Okay, Joshua, I forgive you. Thank you. He was happy. So we are friends. It means that we have arrived. Elena evaded the answer. Good night, Josué. Good night. Everything went well. Elena was startled when she heard Nicholas's voice. He was sitting on the terrace in a chair. Are you not sleeping? She asked, surprised he didn't answer. And she sat next to him. Nicholas, how about tomorrow we go to the city, we eat the side, and go to the amusement rides? Of course. She pulled Elena towards himself and kissed her passionately. Let's go upstairs, he said. She couldn't refuse. Elena was woken up by a bright ray of sun. Nicholas was sleeping next to her with his head leaning on his shoulder. She moved her head. What time was it? It was in the morning, and I turned off the alarm when you fell asleep, Nicholas said without opening his eyes, hugging her. What if you don't run today? It's okay. Then I'll go to the shower. Elena smiled. Excellent idea. I'll go with you. They came out of the shower an hour later. While Elena was drying her hair, Nicholas was preparing breakfast sleepily. She went out to the kitchen. Dad, today is our day off. Yes, my dear, your head godmother suggests going to the rides and eating ice cream. After having a quick breakfast and getting dressed, they headed to the city. Well, gentlemen, what are your proposals? Hector began. It was the afternoon when they met at Bernardo's house. Time does not wait. Soon our business lady will begin to attract sponsors. Yes, Hector has. Reason the construction does not stop, confirmed the mayor. They looked at Bernardo, but he seemed not to listen to them. Since early in the morning he had given instructions to his accountant to recalculate his total fortune and was waiting for the exact figure. From one moment to the next, Bernardo brought him out of his reverie. Hector, what do you think about this? I think we have to act. Have the lawyers prepare the documents as quickly as possible. He said, we just need to protect ourselves from a possible bankruptcy of the company. Hector reflected. How will you protect yourself? We will act as sponsors, and a sponsor does not imply receiving anything in return. Well, I don't know. Maybe we could make some kind of contract to participate in the production. Cipriano suggested. We could, but it is unlikely. They already have everyone, the necessary ones, participating except the sponsors. Then we just have to take the risk anyway. They will have to put someone in the administration anyway. They will prefer someone local, and after our man is in charge, we will recover everything we have invested, only multiplied by several times, said Hector and laughed. Well, where are you going? Josué was standing leaning on the doorframe, watching his wife writhe in front of the mirror. I want to take a walk through the stores. Natalia nor. She didn't even turn to her husband. And with whom, if it's not indiscretion? She asked Josué. Natalia turned to him. Since when have you been interested in what I do and who I am with? Before you didn't care where I went and with whom. What has changed? Well, maybe yesterday's absence. By the way, Damien also disappeared. You weren't with him, dear. He's jealous, dear, answered Natalia. I just don't want to be fooled. So before sleeping with someone, first divorce me. Well, that's an interesting idea. The woman smiled. I'm going to. Considering it. Natalia passed by Josué with her head held high. She had not had a lover before. With Josué, she only felt humiliation and shame for his attitude towards her, and Damian was kind, affectionate, as well as rich and self-sufficient. Unlike her husband, who still lived at the expense of his father, Natalia and Damian agreed to go to the city together, walk through the shops, have dinner in a restaurant, and then spend a couple of hours in a hotel. Remembering today's night, he decided that the first thing they would visit would be precisely the hotel. Josué was there a lot. Time in SOC. Due to his wife's statement, he finally recovered and decided to go see Elena and also invite her for a walk. But unfortunately, Elena was not at home. Joshua returned home there taking a bottle of whiskey from the home bar. He headed to his bedroom, and an hour later I was already sleeping soundly due to the effect of the alcohol or not. There's Elena, Natalia said worriedly in Damian's ear. She could give us away. They were sitting in one of the small restaurants. Don't worry, Damian smiled. She's with my brother, and we won't He'll pay attention to your brother, so I liked him too when he moved here, but at that time he was still married. I see. Damien feigned indignation. So you're with me just to get closer to my brother? No, of course no, Natalia said. Just at that moment, no, I knew he had such a handsome brother. Nicholas and Elena also noticed them, but decided not to discuss it. They were busy with their small group at night. Tired but happy, they were sitting on the terrace drinking tea. A little later, they were told. Elena's colleagues joined in, and they all shared their impressions about the weekend. Elena, I have prepared some documents, she said. Announce only a draft, but I think you should take a look at them. Some papers also arrived from Barcelona today. I think you will also be interested. Elena did not have time to respond when Bernardo appeared on the threshold. Sorry for coming unannounced, he began. Elena, can I talk to you alone? I'm listening, Bernardo, said Elena as she walked away from the house. The man stopped. He turned towards her. He took her hand and Elena said, no, it's romantic, he said, but since I saw you, I can't get you out of my head. You've loved me, Helena. I know I'm too old for you. Don't talk nonsense, said Elena. You are a very interesting and attractive man, and the years don't affect you. Not at all. On the contrary, they give you more masculinity. She, who was talking nonsense, Elena, I would like to open up to you. Don't think badly, but I think I have fallen in love with you. Elena, pretending to be disconcerted by this confession, remained silent. Either. Bernardo said nothing more is already too much. Afternoon, he said after a while, let's go, I'll take you home. She followed him, wanting to get to her room as quickly as possible to reflect on this whole situation. Elena. Bernardo took his hands in hers again. I understand that maybe I'm not the admirer you dreamed of, but could you give this old lover a dinner, okay? I agree, replied Helena. When does it seem like tomorrow? At Bernardo, he was happy. According to you, it's going well. Instead of answering, Bernardo sealed his lips in his hands. Perfect. Then. See you tomorrow. Elena tried to free her hands. See you tomorrow, Elena. I will be waiting with great anticipation, Bernardo whispered and headed towards his car, shaking his head. She continued along the path towards the house. Elena woke up earlier than usual yesterday. She did not have time to analyze the conversation with Bernardo, had not reviewed the documents that arrived. Let's concentrate, she ordered herself with these thoughts. She dressed quickly and putting the documents in her backpack, she ran out of the house. She decided to stop somewhere and read them in nature. When he reached the river, he found a comfortable place, and he took the documents out of his backpack and began to study them. The more he read, the happier he felt. The documents revealed that the state agencies found out about his construction project and liked the idea. The government decided to support their initiatives and even allocate corresponding subsidies. It also proposed to organize similar projects in other regions of the country, and several large companies offered to sponsor such projects. Hello. Elena, you're so busy that you don't even have time to visit an old friend like me, and I'm waiting. Bullen was next to Elena. Bullen, what are you doing here? Elena didn't notice how he approached her and looked at her with scared eyes. She was just taking a walk. Do you understand? I still can't open up to you, Bullen. I understand, she said. Helena, you shouldn't trust Bernardo. If I know Bullen, thank you for warning me. The old woman walked along the shore. Elena also got up. She put the documents in her backpack and ran in the direction. Since she needed to think about another question, how to behave with Bernardo without reaching any conclusion. Elena headed home. While walking along the path towards the house, someone grabbed her hand and took her behind the house. She was about to resist the kidnapper when she realized. She turned around and saw Nicholas. What manners are these, Nicholas? She said. Nicholas stopped, cut her off towards him and said, would you be willing to escape from me in the house? So I decided to kidnap you for a moment. Why did you ask, Elena? I know what you want. Clarity in our relationships. Although you warned me that you are not ready for that, you came here with a purpose that is your priority. You probably did not expect to fall in love with someone. Yes, Nicholas put his finger on his lips. And do not resist. We are attracted to each other, but the falling in love is not in your plans. And you try not to give in to your feelings, at least until you finish what you came to do, but you can't completely give up on them either. Isn't it? Elena was hesitant. Yes, he was right. She can't pretend that he is her indifferent, not even for a while. He doesn't want to give up either, him or Chisti. You're right, Elena replied. I can't demand from you what I myself can't yet give you. I'm sorry, but we still have to wait until all this is over. Yes, we will wait. But there is something that won't wait. He leaned down and kissed the girl. They stood kissing, forgetting everything in the world. Elena spent the whole day at the construction site. She decided not to go to the office so that the mayor and the other candidates would get nervous. And so it was Cipriano called to Bernard. Hysterically demanding a meeting, Ben growled and hung up. Half an hour later, the whole group was together. What's wrong? Hector said disapprovingly. While we were distracted, a document arrived. Colin said the ministry is interested in knowing what help we are providing to the company in the construction of a new plant. We were able to provide everything necessary for the visiting specialists and workers. Well, what did you answer? Bernardo asked lazily. He still couldn't understand why the mayor. I was so agitated, I replied, that we are doing everything possible to ensure the comfort of the workers. In short, it is not about that. The management called and warned that sponsors are coming to evaluate the size of the production and sign material support contracts. Bernardo and Hector exchanged glances, worried. And what did you ask? And Cipriano wiped the sweat from his brow, said that there are practically already sponsors, and that the contracts are practically signed. He exhaled and stayed waiting for the response from your partners. You're a great guy for responding like that, said Hector, looking at the rest, but we haven't decided yet. How much will each one contribute? I don't know about you, the mayor began, but I can't give more than a fifth. Well, no one expected more from you, Hector snorted. What? You say, Bernardo. Let's go half and half. Okay. Bernardo accepted easily. Go and fix this as quickly as possible. He made a gesture to the mayor. Talk to Elena about the sponsorship. Cipriano left quickly, but all his efforts were in vain. Elena did not appear at the office when Cipriano asked and about Elena's whereabouts. She replied that she had gone to work and that she probably would not return that day. He could not be asked to come. Chano asked, is it a matter related to the help of sponsorship that we discussed? Well, that can be discussed with me, he answered. Announce what you want. We have decided to act as real sponsors. Do they have that amount? She asked in disbelief. Well, of course, if we are offering it, it is because we have it. The mayor responded with pride. Very well, today, I will prepare all the necessary documents. Then we will sign an agreement with Elena where she recommends them as sponsors. We will send all these documents to Barcelona, and once the money is transferred, our management will sign us. We will deliver the copies personally. How is it not Elena who signs the contracts? Was surprised Cipriano. Of course, no, she subordinates herself to the general director and owner of the company. All the important documents are signed by him, but she has the authority to decide who can be a sponsor and who cannot. I agree. I will provide all the necessary information on our part, and please, if possible, do not delay shipping. Don't worry, he said. He announces with an ironic smile as soon as Elena sees him. Well, the documents will be sent immediately to Barcelona. You seem to be preparing for an appointment. Elena shivered. Hearing Nicholas' voice, she hadn't heard when he came in. Well, that's right. I have an appointment with Bernardo. At least I want him to. Think about that. Elena decided to be honest. What game are you playing? He was angry and barely concealed it. Nicholas, I already told you that I would explain everything to you, but later this only concerns me. And them, they were surprised. Nicholas, are you planning to go on dates with someone else besides Bernardo? Did not smile Elena. This will be the first and last, but it is necessary. I cannot cancel it. Elena, I have no right to put conditions on you, but I don't want this to be a complete date. You understand what I mean? I don't want that either. And I assure you that it will be like this now. Forgive me. I have to go. She left the room and headed outside where Bernardo was already waiting for her. Elena, as always, you are lovely. I can't find the words to express my admiration, he said as they drove to the restaurant. Elena was modestly silent, barely containing her voice. Laughter in the restaurant. Bernardo served her and kept complimenting her. I wouldn't like it at all for you to leave here, Bernardo said, looking into her eyes. But that's impossible. This is just me. First project of several others. She began guessing where the conversation was going, and if someone else took care of those projects, he suggested we could start something else and turn this town into a city. You are an ambitious person, Bernardo, and why not your intelligence and my ability? Business, the world will be at our feet. Bernardo's eyes were shining. Are you proposing me to be your partner? Elena tried to cool her enthusiasm. And what about your colleagues? Bernardo ignored Elena's last question and began the conversation for which I had organized this date. Elena, I already told you that you are not indifferent to me. I only think about you and what I am going to propose to you now. Believe me, I do it just to be with you. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. I know that you already plan to involve sponsors in your project, and as I understand it, you have even reached agreements with them. I thought it would be better if you had only one sponsor. And that sponsor is me, said Bernardo, but why would I like you and I to be the only ones who as a businessman, but also as a common man who wants to be with you, but that is a lot of money. Where are you going to get that amount from? Believe me, Elena, I have the funds. Elena smiled and Bernardo brightened. You will see, together we will achieve success. He raised his glass. Bernardo, health, health, responded Elena. The rest of the evening Bernardo flirt with her. Elena made an effort to play along. She laughed at her jokes. She smiled charmingly and blinked flirtatiously as she approached the town. Bernardo whispered to Elena, "What do you say if we have a cup of coffee at my house?" "What's wrong with your wife?" Elena asked. "So I always forget that I'm married. But with a word from you, and we'll wait for now. I don't want her to have misunderstood about us." "It's not convenient for us at this moment," Elena said. "How intelligent you are," Bernardo whispered in admiration and tried to kiss her. But Elena moved away. Come on, I'm a decent girl." She acted like she was angry. "What do you think of me? Take me home immediately. Please forgive me." Bernardo got scared. "I didn't mean anything bad. I just forgot how to behave with a woman I like. You'll have time to think about it." Elena got out of the car, happy that the driver had arrived right at her house. "Good night." Elena listened in the distance, but didn't respond. "How was it?" Nicholas was sitting as usual on the terrace with a bottle, with beer in her hand. Amused, Elena responded, and taking the bottle from her hands, she took a drink. They talked a little more, and then they went asleep. When she woke up in the morning, Elena didn't find Nicholas by her side. How strange, she thought. Where could he have gone? She left the room and went to look for him. Christy was sleeping peacefully after fixing the blanket. Elena went to the living room, but there was no one there, or in the kitchen. She returned to her room, took a shower, and changed to go for a run. When she left to the terrace, he heard someone approaching the house. "Oh, Elena," said Damian, entering the terrace. "It seems that my brother doesn't give you enough exercise since you go running every morning. Or maybe you have another trainer who you meet in the mornings." You hint to Josué. Damian laughed out loud. "I'm not referring to Bernardo. Not only are you deceiving Josué, but you are also making his father look bad. And believe me, he doesn't like that. And I see that you know a lot about everyone here." Damian narrowed his eyes maliciously. "Where are you getting that from?" "That information, and more importantly, why you should leave your detective career," said Elena, as she looked him up and down. "Because I know a lot about you too, and I could use that information." "You are threatening me." Damian took a step towards her. "Stay away from her." The appearance of Nicholas, he calmed his brother's outburst. "Wow, the protector has arrived," said Damian with disdain, moving away from Elena. "Do you know who you are protecting, brother? The woman I love?" Nicholas replied, "And listen carefully. If you behave like that again, he will regret it. Besides, you should leave, brother." "No. You are welcome here. For what should I do?" "This is our parents' house," Damian replied. "This is my house. Our parents bought your share." If you remember, Damian had no choice but to go pick up his things. Elena looked at the clock. There was very little time left to run. "Well, let's go have a coffee." Nicholas hugged her by the shoulders and took her to the kitchen. "Where you were?" Elena asked when they sat down at the table. "Oh, I forgot." Nicholas ran out of the house and returned a minute later with a bouquet of lilies. Elena, she smiled and buried her face in the bouquet. "Well," she said, "I'm telling you, she's not here by chance." Damian appeared again on the kitchen threshold, this time with a suitcase. "You need help," Nicholas said. Damian disappeared immediately. "And you bought his share?" Elena asked, trying to change the subject. "When my wife got sick and needed fresh air, we decided to sell our apartment and move to some town. Mom and Dad, who were already pensioners, liked the idea, but Damian opposed and demanded his share of the sale of the apartment. My parents were offended and transferred this house only to my name, and your wife, it turned out that she had hidden her illness for a long time. The pregnancy only made it worse, and she did not survive childbirth." "I'm sorry." Elena felt very ashamed for having opening that wound. He put his hand on Nicholas's and gave it a gentle squeeze. Nicholas, in response, covered her hand with his own. "When he saw you for the first time in 3 years, I remembered that he hadn't had a woman in a long time. He smiled. "And then when you forgot to put on your contact lenses, I almost got lost in your eyes." "Nicholas, I promise that when all this is over, I will tell you everything alone. I'm afraid that after that your feelings towards me will change." "And what are you planning to do?" Nicholas asked, but she didn't answer. She just smiled, and he continued drinking his coffee. Damian was furious that Elena was putting his life in danger. He had to do something about it urgently, but what? From her words, he understood that she was hiding something, And if he managed to find out what it was, he could use it to his advantage. She knew too much about everyone, and yes, Damian. He turned the car sharply when he reached the nearest store. He stopped and went in, buying everything that caught his attention. The man asked the cashier, "Do you know where I can rent a house around here?" At that moment, Bylan entered the store. "Ask Bullen," the woman said. "Cashier, she takes care of a house. Maybe she'll let you rent it." Bylan looked at the man with disdain. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for a house to rent to spend time with Natalia." Dami was perplexed for a second. "What's wrong with you here? Everyone sees, everyone knows. The only thing Bernardo doesn't know is yours with Natalia." "You are wrong, Natalia, and I only have a friendship relationship," explained Damian. "Yes, of course," Bylan snorted. "Then what about the house?" asked Damian. "I will pay." "Okay, come on, the money won't hurt me, but the payment is in advance." Damian. He took out the money immediately. Bullen took it, counted the bills, and put them in his pocket. "Come in the afternoon. I have to clean first." For centuries, no one has set foot in that house without buying anything. Bullen left the store. She didn't like him very much. Damien didn't. "I would have let them enter that house, but I needed the money." When I got to Felipe's house, the old woman stopped for a moment before entering. She didn't feel like cleaning, but it was necessary to remove all the memories of the former owners. A few hours later, Bullen left the house and dragged a big bag to her own house. She hid it and came out again. She still had some things to do. "You know one thing, Cipriano, you have become a stingy." "Why does the government give you money?" Elena heard a familiar voice and left her office to see why Bullen was screaming so much when she saw her. Bullen addressed her. "Look, dear, you try so hard for us with your own money, and this scoundrel receives money from the government for us and keeps it as if it were his own." "Elena, don't worry." Cipriano turned red. "Bylan, get out of here. We will solve your problem." He started to push the old woman towards the exit, but she was staring at Elena and shouted, "Solution? I doubt you always have excuses." Elena understood that the old woman had not made that scene for no reason. She approached the mayor and the old woman and took her by his arm, took her outside, saying, "Don't worry, Cipriano, I'll solve it." He smiled. "Elena, Bylan, what's wrong with you?" "What happened?" he asked in a whisper when they left. "Elena, I rented your house to Damian. That's what's happening. You've gone crazy." Why?" "Elena, I need to repair my house, and I don't have money," said Bylan, almost crying. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was embarrassed, but don't worry, I took all your things out of there." Elena rolled her eyes and was thoughtful. Then she took out her phone and called Benjamin. "Come to my office urgently." Beeman, he was one of the engineers who had come to work in the construction on behalf of his father. He was in charge of the electrification of the plant in Barcelona. He was dedicated to installing listening and video surveillance equipment. "Bullen, go home now. Someone will come. Let him enter our house for a while, but make sure he doesn't cross paths with Damian." Bullen obediently headed to the house. Elena ran along the river, reflecting. More than a month had passed since her arrival. She had come with one purpose: revenge. She had a clearly drawn-up plan with all the details considered, but something happened that Elena couldn't foresee. She realized she would need to make adjustments. At first, she didn't like Bernardo's proposal to be the sole sponsor. She had planned that everyone lost money, but then he realized that his production was already depriving him of labor and therefore of profits. In addition, Bernardo was practically the unofficial leader of the town, so if he fell, everyone fell with him. His son Josué, who was the first on his revenge list, also depended completely on his father, and in some way he had already taken revenge by marrying Natalia. Bernardo was left alone, the man who had raised a horrible son, a scoundrel who was the cause of the death of his grandmother, who had brought the villagers to misery. Elena ran out onto the road and heard a horn behind her. She stopped, and the car also stopped. "Elena, dear, it was Bernardo. Something happened. I thought we had agreed everything." "You mean the sponsorship agreement?" She looked to the man who had approached and stopped in front of her 2 days ago. Bernardo, and two of her colleagues had signed a sponsorship agreement. The contract specified that the sponsors were 3 people. Of course, she provided all the excerpts of my bank accounts to prove my solvency. Bernardo did not mention that now his house, cars, and companies were mortgaged. Bernardo. Elena took him by the arm. "Do you really think I will show my support for you quickly? It would be suspicious. Why do we need that? So what do we do?" "Nothing. Everything is under control. In the letter of recommendation to the board, I mentioned that I recommend only you as a sponsor and future manager." Bernardo, full of joy, tried to kiss Elena, but she gently moved away. "I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have a lot of things to do." Bernardo ran to his car while Elena continued her walk and quickly called her father. "Don't worry," Santos said calmly. "Everything is under control." I already signed the documents and sent them to you. He can transfer his fortune. I'm not worried about that. I am worried about this liar. Dad is looking for information about me. I am afraid that he will discover everything before it is resolved. I understand. Tell Benjamin to connect the videos from the cameras in the house where Damian has settled to the general server. I will notify the head of my team. Security to keep an eye on it. Good morning, gentlemen. Elena began with a pompous tone. I had gathered everyone in the administration conference room yesterday. The documents regarding your sponsorship application arrived. I reviewed them and I am about to announce their content. So to my regret, only a candidacy has been approved as a sponsor. The fact is that our project is of great importance and all the money invested will not only be used to launch the production in your locality, but also in other regions. Therefore, we cannot take on all investors from a single region, especially when preparation has already begun in other parts of the country. Sponsorship proposals are also coming from those areas. And you understand how honorable it is to help the development of the state. The names of these people will be known to everyone, which is why we cannot assign a single sponsor to a region. While he was giving his speech, Elena watched the gathered men attentively, wanting to understand what would happen after she mentioned the name. Hector made an effort to seem interested in what Elena was saying, but in reality, he couldn't wait for her to finish before getting up and leaving. Cipriano tried to listen to every word attentively, but he didn't understand anything, which was obvious, and only Bernardo. He sat with an expression of master of the world. It was clear that he interpreted each word as a personal compliment. And now I will name our future sponsor. Elena took the documents, pretending to search for the name, and announced it will be Bernardo Cecita. Bernardo feigned surprise. He jumped up and ran towards Elena. He took her by the hand and started shaking her. Thank you, Elena, for the trust. It is very unexpected. There is nothing unexpected. Hector snorted. Everyone knows that you have been after Elena for a long time. Our Elena, I thought that you were a professional, but you're like everyone else. What did Hector promise you? Keep your conjectures to yourself. I didn't decide. My superiors did, Helena said in a firm voice. Of course, Hector murmured, leaving the room with slam the door. How is that possible? Cipriano. Elena muttered. But this is not fair, and you, Cipriano, should not have even presented your candidacy, said Elena, addressing the mayor. Pray that no one starts asking where the mayor of the town gets so much money to be the sponsor of a project of state importance. Cipriano blushed and ran out of the office. Elena. Bernardo gently took his hand. I am very grateful. We had dinners with me without a doubt, but not today. I have everything scheduled to the minute for the next 2 weeks. So later, by the way, you can transfer the money. He announces he will give you the details, and he left the room. Several more days passed. The money was received from Bernardo, but he barely saw Elena. She always managed to avoid him. Who would have thought that I would end up doing this in this house? At that moment, Natalia was sitting on an old sofa in Felipe's house, barely covered by a sheet, and slowly drinking wine from a glass. It's strange, a few years ago, she didn't even look at this place. I didn't even walk through this part of the town. Damian listened to her attentively. The poor lived here, that's what I thought. So now there are only old people left, but before there were many problematic families. For example, in this house there lived an old woman with her granddaughter who was my age. Her mother Elena had died. She was a few years old, so no one ever saw her father. Elena followed in her mother's footsteps. She had a relationship with a rich boy from the town. He lied to her about love, and she believed him. They had sex. She got pregnant. She thought he would get married with her, but he made fun of her and left her. Her grandmother died of sadness. She raised a libertine daughter, and the granddaughter came out the same. And what happened to the granddaughter? She also had an idea in her head. Elena disappeared. They said she drowned, but no one looked for her. The old woman Bullen. Maybe he knows something. What the girl's name was? Elena. Natalia was surprised and a little bothered by Damian's interest. She wanted him to think only of her. Come here. I didn't come to talk about the dead. But Damian didn't seem to listen to her. Elena said thoughtfully, what do you think? Elena. It's our Elena. Natalia laughed. Forget it. That Elena was blonde with a short, fat round face, and this one is clearly from high society. Yes, you're right. Probably Damian decided to investigate his suspicions later and approached Natalia. After all, he hadn't come to talk Santos. The head of security said, I think you'll be interested in this. He approached the table and ran his fingers over the keyboard, and an image appeared on the screen. After seeing it, Santos thought for a moment. Well, we shouldn't underestimate this Damien. I'm sure that sooner or later. The truth will come early. We should neutralize him. The head of security suggested. No, it's not necessary, but we have to keep an eye on him. Let's send someone posing as Elena's driver. I had planned to go to town myself. The matter is close to being resolved, but it's still too early for me. Appearance thereupon returning from her Elena saw a family car. Next to the door her car, wondering where her car had appeared in the town. Elena approached the house and went up to the terrace on the wicker chairs. Nicholas and Osvaldo were there. Osvaldo, he was one of his father's guards. Osvaldo, why are you here? The woman asked. No one had warned her about the arrival of someone from Barcelona. Elena Santos, he sent me with you. He said that you really need a car to work. She was very surprised. Production is increasing soon. It will be up and running. It will be difficult for you without a car to fulfill everything. Besides, Santos decided that you will need a driver. Okay, Osvaldo understood, but today I have the day off, and you can also rest. Yes. Thank you, but first I would like to give you some documents. Elena looked at Nicholas and Osvaldo made a gesture with his hand indicating that she should follow him to the house. Elena, we recently obtained this from the video surveillance system that Benjamin installed. Osvaldo turned on the laptop and showed Elena the video. That's why Santos decided to send me with you, posing as the driver. Do you think everything is so serious? Elena asked thoughtfully. It never hurts to take precautions. I agree. I understand, Osvaldo. But today I have no intention of. Leave the house, so you can rest. Perfect, then I'll go get my things. Nicholas was lying on the lounge chair dozing. Chrissy was running around the garden with the puppy. Elena wanted that idyllic scene to last forever. You have a good boss. He even provides you with a security guard. Like if you felt like you had an enemy here. Dee said they always appear when they start to smell a lot of money. Elena responded, by the way, Damian didn't go anywhere, said Nicholas. He stayed on the outskirts in an abandoned house, maybe just. He has fallen in love with Natalia and doesn't want to leave, Elena suggested. Maybe, although I hadn't seen that sentimentality before, it's probably dangerous for traveling at this dangerous moment. Elena pretended to be surprised. Elena, you know perfectly well what I'm talking about. Elena decided to stop pretending that she didn't understand anything. And he simply looked at the man. We are going to reach an agreement. I understand your desire not to reveal who you are and why you are here. But I ask you, if I suspect something, do not try to convince me otherwise. I prefer to be prepared to know your true identity instead of being surprised. But if I'm honest, sometimes I feel like shaking you, so that you tell me everything and give you the opportunity to protect you, or prevent you from doing stupid things. All the stupid things that I could do I have already done, and I have paid for them, she said with a sad smile and hugged him. Damian reflected something. He told him that the Helena who lived in his brother's house and the Elena in the house he rented were somehow related. He asked Bylan who lived there, but she said it was hers who had died a long time ago. The malicious old woman definitely knew something, but she didn't say it. Who was the rich boy that the girl was dating? Since there were only a few rich families in the town, could she try to find him? Of the rich kids in the town were only left Natalia and Josué. The next day Damian left early for the city, called Natalia, and they agreed to meet in a cafe. Excited, she ran to get dressed. You're going to see your lover, said Josué, drunk, standing at the door. Get out of here, Natalia said. With disgust, Josué's eyes became bloodshot. Get out of here. He rushed towards her and grabbed her. And why didn't you tell me at our wedding? You were trembling with emotion. You wanted to marry me, and now you're throwing me out. You're not going anywhere. You're in trouble. Home, and you will fulfill your marital duty. Of course, right now, she said. Natalia gathering all her strength, she pushed her husband away. Josué stepped back, releasing her, and Ella ran out of the room. When she went out to the patio, she ran towards the car and got into it desperately. She dialed the number of his father when Josué lunged at the car and hit it. Dad, this canalla is hitting me. Hector arrived quickly, not alone but with his driver. Together they separated the enraged Josué from his daughter's car. Take her home, Hector ordered the driver, and I will go. Let's talk to Bernardo. Dad, go. I need to meet someone. Natalia wanted to be in Damian's arms as soon as possible. At what meeting? Her father asked, surprised. A business matter. Then I'll explain everything to you. And without waiting for an answer, Hector left a few minutes later. I was in Bernardo's office. Meanwhile, Elena was standing at the new plant. Tomorrow this plant would start operating, and within a couple of weeks, all production would be underway. The inauguration of the company was solemnly planned by her father and several important officials. They would come then, everything would be resolved. And what are you planning to do? Damien asked while he was with Natalia in the hotel bed. Of course, I'm going to file for divorce, Natalia replied. I don't understand what you saw in him. I really don't. You had the opportunity to go to the big city and find a worthy husband there. You are beautiful, intelligent, from a good family. I didn't want to study. Also, my father wouldn't have let me go to the city alone. So here in the town, everyone knows each other, and it's better. Be a big fish in a small pond. But why, Joshua? There was no one else at that time. Everyone dispersed right after school, and I was in love with him back then. And he loved you? Asked Damien. He loved everyone back then he especially liked. Trick the country girls into believing that they were deeply in love, and then they would get married. Seriously, as we made fun of them afterwards. Natalia laughed without realizing that Damien had become sad. Dear, we should not continue our conversation at my house. You go and see how things are there. Meanwhile, I will prepare for our meeting. Natalia smiled. She dressed quickly, and they both got into their cars and returned on the road. Damien reflected on what he had heard from Natalia. There is a high probability that the aggressor of that Helena was Josué, and if it is him, then it can be assumed that Elena came to take revenge on him. But where had she been all these years, and who is behind her? She needs to find photos of this Elena urgently. My love. He dialed his lover's number. You still have old photos of you. I want to see what you were like when you were little. Why? Did Natalia ask in surprise to find out what our children might look like. Damien said, and realized that Natalia had probably gotten into trouble almost. She lost her speech from joy. She promised. She looked for the photos and hurried home. She quickly dressed, put on makeup, and grabbing all her albums, she prepared to run to Damian. Damian looked at the photo of Elena that he had discreetly taken yesterday. Natalia brought all her albums, and I had to listen to her for a long time and admire her photos as a child until she showed her class photo. And here it is. By the way, this is really Elena. This misfortune could be our Elena. Damien agreed that he couldn't, and discreetly he took it with his phone. He transferred the photo from his phone to the computer and opened the Photoshop program. He made her brown hair wavy, her figure slimmer, her cheeks thinner, her brown eyes. He dressed her in a modern and elegant dress, and there was Elena, the businesswoman in the photo, grabbing her laptop. Damien ran out of the house but couldn't get out. At the door, there was a young man of impressive size. Who are you? What are you doing here? Damien shouted. You don't need to shout, the man said as he approached Damien and sat him in a chair. Guess why I'm here? He didn't try to deceive Damien. You have deceived very serious people. I promised to find them and deliver you. They only gave me a small package for you. The boy took a bag out of his pocket. So I'll have to take apart, for example, your head. I will return everything. Damien was very scared. Of course you will, but my clients need compensation. The man shook the bag. Let's make a deal. Tears ran down Damien's cheeks. I propose to transfer all the money I have in his accounts. Another man entered the house. And you? Who are you? Who had the bag? He looked at the newcomer. He also owes us something, but that's another matter. I'm Osvaldo, Santos's personal driver. The man extended his hand. It's he, the one who had the voice extended his hand in response. Yes, he is. By the way, he is here in the village. Well then, let's do it like this. As soon as you transfer the money, it will be under your complete control, and the bosses will deal with each other. An hour later, leaving the package in the chair, the first man. He left the house. They took everything he had. Damian exclaimed desperately, but it's still better than losing his life. Osvaldo responded as he also headed towards the door. And if you can stop worrying about your Photoshop, no one cares anymore, and make sure you thank Elena. She convinced her father to let you live. Osvaldo left, and Damian sat looking aimlessly. Bernardo headed to Elena's office. Throughout the town, there were posters announcing the celebration in honor of the opening of the company. There would even be a solemn part where they would announce the manager of this production. Bernardo was surprised by Elena's silence. He decided to find out. When he arrived at the office, he rushed towards his office without paying attention to the man who was standing in front of the window with his back to the door. Bernardo began to ask directly from the threshold, Elena, when are you going to tell me? I need to prepare myself in some way. What are you talking about? Said Elena, surprised at my appointment. What else did Bernardo say? What appointment? Asked the woman coldly. Young man, what appointment? Are you kidding, Elena? You forgot you promised me, said Bernardo with a sinister whisper. You said I would run this company. No, that's what you said. You said, Elena, I didn't make you any promises. You made it all up yourself and appointed yourself. You are not suitable to lead this production. You are too ambitious. You understand what you are saying? You understand that I gave everything I had. That was your personal decision. They warned you about the amount and all. The details, if you don't remember, read the documents. You know what I'll do to you for this, Bernardo shouted and rushed towards Elena, but he stopped abruptly when he met the stern gaze of the man who had turned from the window. Santos, it's you. Bernardo turned pale and began to stutter. Do you know each other? Elena asked, surprised. Father arrived late that night without warning. Yes, Elena, only I know him from a completely different point of view, even more disgusting than you know. He is guilty of your mother's death. Elena opened her eyes with surprise. Although she led a promiscuous life, she was selective with men. Bernardo didn't like her at that moment, and he didn't like that he hit her hard, and the last blow was fatal. To cover his tracks, he threw her into a ditch far from her house. No one wanted to investigate her death due to her lifestyle. Elena clung to the back of a nearby chair, her eyes darkened. Bernardo remained standing, panting. Santos sat his daughter in the chair and poured her a glass of water. You will wonder where all this comes from. You accomplice told me everything when I came years ago. I didn't leave immediately. I went to the cemetery to say goodbye to her. There I found him. Your accomplice was drunk, sitting on his grave, asking for forgiveness for everything. I spoke to him about this issue. I had the intention of settling accounts with you immediately, but I realized that it was not the right time, so I decided to wait, and here I am waiting. Elena returned home, completely devastated. The news that Bernardo was her mother's murderer was a complete surprise for her. Because why didn't you tell me everything right away? He asked his father while they were on the way home. Then you couldn't have carried out your plan calmly. Although our own misfortunes can be accepted and overcome over time, the tragedies of family members and loved ones unbalance us. You needed a clear mind and a cold mind, but what should I do now? If you want, you can go to the police and lock us up for him. He has already lost everything he lived for. He no longer has him at home. Elena took a shower, lay down in bed, and fell asleep immediately. When he woke up, he realized that he had slept late into the night. The house was silent. After being in bed for a while, he decided to go out to the terrace to have a cup of tea. Nicholas was on the terrace, silently pouring him a cup of tea. Tea, how do you feel, Santos? He told me that you were not well. Thank you, I'm better now, said Elena. You already know everything about Bernardo. Yes, he told me everything. They also caught Damian. Well, to those who were deceived, your driver arrived on time. Otherwise, Nicholas did not finish his phrase. Is true. He lost his money. By the way, he found a photo of a girl somewhere. He edited it and realized it was you and ran to show it to someone. Then everyone already knows about me too. Yes, and now what is going to happen between us? I would like there to be something between us, but we come from different social classes. I cannot offer you the standard of life in which you now find yourself, but I cannot join your family either. I do not want to be a pimp. That is why I propose that we simply meet from time to time until you find a man worthy for you. Nicholas, this was not what I wanted to hear from you. Everything you just said is nonsense. That's what they say when it's time to end a relationship. You simply found a good excuse to do it. Well, I listened to you and I understood. Good night, Elena. He got up from the couch and went to his room. I thought you were an intelligent man. A shadow separated from the stairs that led to the second floor and turned into Santos in the light. You could not have gotten so cheap. I wasn't making excuses, Nicholas replied. Maybe just I chose the wrong words. You really are so proud. I could marry your daughter right now. And then what would I offer her? Can you give her your care and support, restore her faith in people, and help her forget all the difficulties she has gone through? That is much more than goods, materials. Believe me, I would never have built my huge empire if I could love someone, but I never had that person, and I worked and worked to try to fill the void in my soul. I only stopped when I found out I had a daughter, and I brought her with me. Believe me, love move mountains and dry seas. Nicholas, you are a good man. If you need Elena, you will do everything possible to live up to it. I know you can do it. And if you can't, I will just rip your head off. Good idea. Santos smiled. Nicholas, the next morning was not the most pleasant for Elena. Woke up feeling a strong stomach upset, and she could barely get to the bathroom. Her head hurt, and her whole body felt weak. It could be stomach poisoning. Or maybe they poisoned me. Elena called Osvaldo. Osvaldo, take me to the bathroom. Hospital, but discreetly so that no one would find out. They left without being seen by anyone in the hospital. Elena described her condition, and they did some tests while she was waiting for the results. She spoke to the doctor. The doctor asked her in detail about how she had been feeling in the last few days. Why? Do you think you have poisoning? The same symptoms can also occur in pregnant women, said the doctor. Unfortunately, a few years ago I had an abortion. Then the doctor told me that I would no longer be able to have children. Well, the Analysis will be ready soon. Based on them, I will prescribe a treatment. A nurse came in with the results. The doctor reviewed them for a long time. He frowned, he smiled mysteriously, and finally putting aside the papers, he looked at Elena. Well, dear lady, I can say that the result, not only me, I was happy, but also a little disconcerted. Come on, don't make me wait, said Elena. I would like to congratulate you. You are pregnant? The pregnancy is early, around 4 to 6 weeks, and if you want to keep your pregnancy, you urgently need to take care of yourself, rest more and worry less. Now, I will prescribe you some vitamins. Come see me in a month. Elena left the clinic with a happy smile. Are you okay? Osvaldo asked, worried. Everything is perfect, wonderful, magical. Elena gave him a kiss on the cheek and dived in the car. During the trip, Osvaldo received a call on his phone. After listening to the interlocutor, Osvaldo responded in agreement, and then hung up. Elena did not even pay attention. She was too absorbed in her thoughts. She didn't notice anything around her. So when Osvaldo stopped the car and said, "We've arrived," she left without thinking and found herself in front of her grandmother's house. Osvaldo, why did you bring me here? She asked, surprised. Just enter the house and you'll find out. Don't worry. I promise you that you will like it. She approached the house, opened the front door, and found herself in a fairy tale. The whole house was decorated with flowers, candles lit everywhere. In the middle of the room, there was a beautifully set table, and next to it, Nicholas was there. He approached Elena and took her hand. Elena, I'm a fool. Last night, I told you a lot of nonsense. Forgive me. I was scared that I couldn't be a good husband for you, but I love you very much and I can't live without you. I will do everything possible to give you the standard of living to which are you used to it. Nicholas took a small box out of his pocket and knelt down. Elena, marry me. Overwhelmed by the feelings that invaded her, she couldn't say a word. The tears rolled down her cheeks, and the only thing she could do was nod her head. Nicholas stood up, and he hugged her. Then he began to cover her face wet with tears, with real kisses. You agree you will marry me? You are not afraid of my modest income? One, I'm not demanding. Elena laughed. I fell in love with you that night. When you took out your contact lenses, I got lost in your eyes, and I realized that I could never get out of them. I also love you, and of course I will marry you, but on the condition that you stop worrying about your income. You will dedicate yourself to what you love, and you will love us. It's okay, I promise we. Nicholas, the eye look surprised. I'm expecting a baby. The pregnancy, it's still early, but I already have her photo. Nicholas picked up Elena in his arms and turned her around the room. The party was in full swing in the town square. Tables were set up around. People were eating, drinking, and having fun, and a small park with attractions for children stretched nearby. Elena, her father, and Nicholas were sitting together at a table. Elena had gone with Nicholas to the hairdresser the day before and had removed the dye from her hair, and when they planned to have the wedding, Saint turned to his future son-in-law. I think at the end of the summer. Nicholas looked at Elena. She smiled back. That's wonderful, and now it's time. Come on, daughter, we need to introduce the general manager of the new plant to the people. Elena shrugged her shoulders and continued to his father to the stage built in the plaza. For a moment of attention, Santos shouted into the microphone, "Dear friends, many kind words have already been said about his new production, but I think all of you are wondering who will be in charge of all this. So here, I want to introduce you to the general director. Please give a warm welcome. All of you know Elena." The people shouted with joy and applauded while Elena, surprised, turned to her father. "But Dad, why aren't you happy?" Santos looked sternly at his daughter. "Yes, of course, I'm happy. It's my creation, so what's the problem anyway? You're going to stay here and live here knowing you. I think you'd go crazy without a job, and this production was created by you, so you should direct it. Understand, Dad? Thank you. I'll just need an assistant director." In the near future, they had already left the stage, and they were near their table. Bullen approached them. "You're afraid of not spending enough time with the family?" Santos asked, surprised. "Don't you see that you'll soon be a grandfather?" Bullen said. Santos opened her eyes wide and looked first at Bullen, then back. The look at her daughter. It's true. Elena lowered her gaze timidly. The modest wedding that Elena dreamed of did not come true. The entire village was celebrating at the wedding. The tables were placed in the same square where all the festivities were celebrated. Natalia was in charge of the menu. She became the official food supplier for the production workers, opening with Elena's permission her own dining room on the company premises. Her cafe was now open permanently, and a modern club would soon open. Her father Hector became the official supplier of raw materials for the new production. Damian handed over all the money he had and began to apologize to Natalia. She forgave him and agreed to marry him. Damian decided not to repeat the mistakes of the past. He stopped, cheat, and began to actively help his future wife in her business. Bernardo turned himself into the police after Santos mentioned the name of the general director of the production. He handed over all his properties that were in guarantee to the bank and went to the police station. He was imprisoned in prison. He surrendered to religion, and after completing his sentence, he retired to a monastery. Josué stopped drinking and approached Elena after hearing her apology for the past. She allowed him to work in one of the workshops. Management speaks well of him as a diligent worker, and colleagues rumor that he has started an affair. Elena started a big renovation at the house. Nicholas doesn't remember him, but he makes sure that his wife eats well, doesn't lift heavy objects, and doesn't overexert herself. Santos, he regularly visits his daughter. He has become very tender and nervous waiting for his grandson. Christy calms him down. Grandpa, don't worry so much, Dad. He will manage. Santos hugged Christy and, burying his face in her hair, he calmed down for a moment. Elena and Nicholas are happy and want to have a big, united family.